دكتور
Yeah.
دكتور you hear me؟
Yeah. I can hear you. Yara,
طيب
right?
دكتور أنا يارا ثانية واحدة بعد
Okay.
حضرتك سامعيني؟
Yeah. There is an echo.
دكتور
Yeah.
هو معلش قبل ما نبدأ أنا كنت عايز أتأكد من حضرتك من حاجة. هو إحنا لما هنتكلم في البرزنتيشن وكده يعني إحنا مش هندخل في الديتيل صح؟ إحنا بس هنقول البوينتس اللي إحنا اتكلمنا عنها في التيرم بيبر.
The broad lines, you have to give me like some kind of information about the case as well. But the most important thing is how you apply your theory to the case you selected.
أوكي يا دكتور.
Okay? Yeah. Okay, so let's start. I'll follow the same order in the list I sent out. We see according to the list. So let's start with Amani Gamal, Ibrahim Ahmed. Okay, Yara Tariq, let's like fix this problem later. So I'll start out with the presentations now. Amani?
حضرتك سامعيني؟
Yeah.
اوكي. هو بس الاول I just wanna say that حتى وانا بعمل readings وكده انا ما كنتش اعرف ان احنا المفروض ان احنا نختار theory ون apply it. يعني انا ما كنتش عارفه الموضوع ده خالص بجد. فانا مش يعني وحضرتك بتقولي اصلا ان المين بوينت في البرزنتيشن ان احنا نطبق الثيري. انا اكيد عملت الترم بيبر وكتبته وكل حاجه بس ما كنتش اعرف
it goes without saying, like we studied lead choices and according to the phrasing of the question.
ما انا ما كنتش اعرف بس ما فيش instructions وانا يعني مش عارفه الصراحه ما كنتش اعرف.
Yeah, I repeatedly mentioned this in class if you just paid attention. Okay, yeah, just like go ahead with the presentation now.
Okay, doctor. أنا برضه هقرأ يعني من ورقة.
You have like yeah, you have 7 minutes, okay?
Okay, ما أقل هعمل في أقل ما تقلقش.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. First of all, I chose the topic of studying the two views that.
Can you speak up?
كده كويس طيب؟
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I chose the topic of studying the two views that democracy in Tunisia is a product of the elites, and the second one, the mass mobilization is the crucial variable. And I discussed the two views. Then I come up with the democracy as an introduction, definition of democracy as an introduction, and I give a simple overview of its roots and history. Then I defined some of the most important principles of democracy generally. After that, I talked about the elites more clearly and talked about...
Yeah, but tell me about, what are the general principles you talked about? You cannot just put the broad frames. You can give me just hints.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I give the four points, 4 principles. First one, that legal equality is one of the main principles of the democracy. Second one, rule of law is another major principle of democracy. Third one, free and fair elections, protected the rights and freedom are some of the other major principles. بس يعني كده كويس؟
Yeah.
Okay. ثانية واحدة يا دكتور بس. Okay. After that, I talked about the elites more clearly and talked about political parties and their effectiveness. And I talked about another party. Then I defined
what are these parties?
لا ما هو انا مش فاكره بالظبط بقى، بس يعني هو كان اكتر حاجه يعني النهارده بارتي اللي قاعده نتكلم عنه كتير يعني في البتاع، وكل ده كان من الريدنجز، يعني جبته من الريدنجز بس بجد مش فاكراها يعني بالظبط in details. Then I searched بعد كده بقى عشان اتكلم عن الماس موبيلايزيشن. هو انا يعني في رايي ان كان الحاجات الموجوده اكتر في الريدنجز كانت عن الاليتس والاحزاب وكده، فعشان اتكلم عن الماس موبيلايزيشن عملت بقى سيرش يعني جبتها من انترنت. Then I searched what are the activities of mass mobilization اللي هو Tunisian people and that and activities in the transformation of Tunisia into a democracy.
Amani,
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry, doctor. Then I also talked about in this section about the mass mobilization. I talked about the U.S. preparations to provide the needed assistance to the Tunisian people at that time. Then I talked about the Jasmine Revolution and its aftermath of the great transformations and the changes towards democracy. بس يعني ده اللي عملته.
Okay, so just to put it briefly, how elite choices, helped with facilitating democratic transition in Tunisia? Like one sentence.
Okay. From the readings, أنا يعني okay. يعني مش مجهزة إن أنا أتكلم يعني، بس من الريدنجز يعني إنه كان بعد بن علي. طب مش عارفة أتكلم بجد.
Okay, Amin, thanks. So Saifullah Hussamuddin Nabil. Are you here? Okay, so he's not. Nada Ahmed Kamal?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, Nada, yeah. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, starting with the historical context of the Tunisian Revolution, 10 years passed after the Tunisian Revolution and the beginning of democratic transition. So, first, it all started with 17 December 2010, when Mohamed Bouazizi burned himself in front of the governor's office, and protests started in all Tunisia. And then Ben Ali's regime fall, and he fled to Saudi Arabia with his family. And a new democratic era started to show. To analyze this democratic, I used Rosto's model by dividing the whole experience into 4 phases, and to know the elite choices how lead to the democratic transition. First, background condition and national unity. This happened through consensus building, when the elite choose that will not be a majority rule or the tradition of democracy of majority rule. It will be majority and minority rule. Everyone will participate in that, and that happens through a coalition between different factions of the Tunisian people. Second phase, which is preparatory phase, and here about conflict and how conflict that here about conflict to prevent polarization that happened in different countries, like Egypt, for example. So Tunisia was ruled by hard secular ideology for a long time, by Ben Ali and Bourguiba's regimes. Then a conflict between different factions will be good for the democratic transition. But a democracy in itself, a conflict in itself, maybe in some point will lead to a conflict. So this is the importance of the third phase, which is decision phase. When the elite chose to form a coalition to accept each other, and that happened through 2 tools, which is dialogue and political pact between the elite. The dialogue happened from 2003 till 2010 in France. The meetings happened in France. They accepted and understand each other, the Islamist and the secular parties.
In what year?
From 2003 till 2010, the meetings in France.
And you put this in the decision phase. This is like the whole model just examines, this short period of transition after the breakdown of the authoritarian regime until...
No, I'm saying how they lead to a pact, the political pact between them, which is a coalition. This is the historical context of the coalition between them.
Okay. So like, to put it like concisely with the decision phase, how they get together, how they manage to get together and they form this coalition.
Yes. So a political pact between them and a coalition between Ennahda party and Takattul party, which is a secular party, and the CPR. Takaful, sorry.
Yeah.
And the CPR, which is also a secular party, and they started a coalition who ruled, which ruled Tunisia for until 2014, and back to authority, back to power again. Sorry. The last phase happened when the coalition actually proved success, which is the habituation phase.
Mm-hmm.
When the coalition proved success and people started to believe in democracy, and democracy turned it from just a trend, a new trend in Tunisia, to a tradition in Tunisia. People who don't believe in democracy started to believe in it after this success. And
how did you marshal evidence for this?
By alternation of power, by different coalitions happened after that, after this coalition success.
But from the point of view of Tunisian people.
What?
But this is like from the point of view of the Tunisian people, from the citizens.
Yeah, in different parties started to follow the lead and to form a new coalitions and opposition and people who don't. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, elites that even was not with the revolution, was not with democracy, started to finally support democracy.
Okay.
Then I go to some manifestations of democracy in Tunisia today with electoral system. Tunisia now have an elected. Tunisia has an elected president, Kais Saied, with 73% of the voters, was through fair and free elections, and political pluralism and participation. pluralism, that opposition have a seat, have a role in the democracy and the democratic transition. And last, freedom of belief and freedom of expression, which was a fundamental part in the whole experience, as the Tunisian constitution guarantee freedom of belief or not belief, with remaining Tunisia as Muslim and Arab country.
Okay,
that's it.
in a few seconds, can you repeat again how did you formulate the background conditions that led to, you know, these kind of preparations and then decision-making processes that facilitated and paved the way for the installation of democratic governance? So say it again, like the background conditions.
Yeah, they go to consensus building, deciding the elite decided that democracy will not be a democracy of the majority. It will be majority and minority rule. Everyone will participate in the democratic transition or in the democratic experience.
Okay, so let's wait for other presentations and then I can like give like a recap or to summarize, you know, what you have said. Okay, thanks, Nada.
Thank you.
We have Nurhan. نورهان هاني متولي عبد الرازق. اوكي. ساندي احمد الدسوقي. يارا طارق.
ايوه يا دكتور، ثانية واحدة.
اوكي يا
At the beginning of my research paper, I spoke about briefly about the general definition of democracy as a suitable beginning for the enter to the topic. And then talking about some principle of democratization in Tunisia, we spoke about the Rosto theory, which has 4 phases. The first phase is background condition, which mean briefly the people should be loyal to their country. And second phase, a preparatory phase, which represents some conflicts between classes in society. And the third phase, which represent a period after disputes and conflicts, and they have to decide to have a democratic system or democratic regime in their country. And the fourth phase, the habituation phase, and I can't understand it well from the reading, but I think in Huma have to habituation with their democratic system that they establish it in their country. And as I said, I talked about some principle of democracy. Talked about and after talking about democracy as a principle and definition, and that I've talked about the democracy in Tunisia. I briefly قلت in Tunisia يعني had many prizes that like in here country afforded in here model of being a peaceful and democratic country between يعني among Arab countries, and it got اللي هي Nobel Prize, Peace Prize, for making a dialogue about peace, about the peace and compromises of democratic transition. And then I talked about the.
No, you tell me. Yeah. You tell me who got the prize, and the context. You have to tell me. You have to tell me what who got the prize, what actors you're talking about.
Civil society organizations in Tunisia هم اللي عملوا dialogue about the peaceful democratic transition وgot Nobel Peace Prize. أنا قرأت ده في reading.
Yeah, okay. And how can you streamline this with the phases you talked about from Rostam model?
أنا اتكلمت في الحتة دي يعني كبداية إن أنا أدخل عن جذور الردود بتاعة الديمقراسي عامة في تونس. فهي فقط يعني introduction كده إن أنا أتكلم إن هي دلوقتي عامة إن هي model of democracy among the Arab countries. بس أنا بتكلم إن هي كنقطة بداية بس مش أكتر، ما اتكلمتش باستفاضة، يعني هي مش نقطة مهمة أعتقد يعني.
Okay, just briefly, we have like 3 more minutes.
Okay, I
give me more details about the application, how you applied these phases to the Tunisian case, how the process actually unfolded in Tunisia, and then what kind of background conditions you talked about, and then what kind of preparations and what kind of decision-making political actors actually made, and then how this paved the way for the establishment of democratic institutions.
اوكي بس هو انا ركزت في البيبر على فكره الهوستيليتي بتوين البارتيز في تونس اللي هم السيكولاريستس والاسلامستس، ان هم كانوا big obstacles for achieving the democratic regime او democratic system عامه في تونس. وفكره ان الهوستيليتي between them كانت بتعيق تحقيق الديمقراطيه، ان هم they both need or lean toward the democratic regime but they don't cooperate with each other، وده عاقهم كتير عن تحقيق الديمقراطية. وبعدها اتكلمت عن
But doesn't this contradict with the introduction you made?
Yes, أنا ما كنتش أعرف إن إحنا هنابلاي الثيوري دي على الحالة على تونس. بس give introduction، بعد كده اتكلمت عن الأحزاب، وبعد كده اتكلمت عن الماس موبيلايزيشن، وأجيب conclusion في الآخر. أنا كانت من وجهة نظري إن they both إن هم have يعني الاتنين كان ليهم إيد في تحقيق الديمقراطية في تونس في الآخر يعني.
Okay, you still have like 1 minute and a half. Do you want to say something?
اتكلمت عن الإليت في تونسيا، إن هم كانوا divided into الإليت اللي هم empowered والإليت اللي هم عندهم absolute power، وإزاي إن هم الاتنين اتفاعلوا مع الريفوليوشن بتاعة تونسيا. كان رد فعلهم إيه، وكلمت عن mobilization as a variable يعني في تحقيق برضه transition democratic transition في تونس، وgive a conclusion في الآخر.
Okay, thanks, Yara. Guys, by the way, if you have any questions, you need to ask, it's up to you to ask your colleagues. So I can give you some time, to ask and discuss. Just raise your hand. So we have Nurhan.
Yes, doctor, I'm here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. First, I read all the readings. I tried to get the main idea from them. I tried to organize my term paper in a different way. First, I talked about democracy in general, its definition, how democracy don't have any certain definition or condition because it's not a stable phenomena. Then I talked about some main characteristics of democracy, like freedom of mass media, freedom of movement, uncertain outcomes of the competition of the election. In the second part, I tried to talk about the role of political elites in raising democracy in any society in general. In the third part, I talked about the role of mass mobilization in democracy in any society. In the fourth part, I started to do the implication of the 4 stages on the Tunisian case study. اتكلم بالتفاصيل يا دكتور عن كل حاجة ولا؟ يعني ابتدي اتكلم عن النقط اللي انا اتكلمت عنها بالتفاصيل.
Yeah, you have 6 minutes. Yeah, you should have tailored your presentation accordingly.
Okay, first, as I said, as in the first section, I talked about some of the characteristics of the democratic regime, like free of mass media, as mass media is the way of communication between the citizens and the government, and no democratic system can function without free media that can criticize the government or show the different dimensions of the government. In the second section or the second part, I talked about political islets, the definition of political islets, how political islets can organize the democracy in a better way, as they are the most educated part in the society. Their decision is rational. They calculate the gains and the circumstances or sacrifices they were doing after taking any decision. The third part, I talked about the mass mobilization and their role in raising democracy in any society, like in case of this revolution of 25th of January in Egypt. As the first part, I implied the case study of Tunisia, the first stage, which is the national unity. Doctor, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there is an interruption in internet.
No problem.
I tried to talk about the stage of national unity. As in the case study of Tunisia, people didn't appear anymore the area or the period of the President Ben Ali. They faced many problems during his region or his area, like economic conditions, society, some problems in the society, like unemployment. A lot of studies said that the rate of unemployment was very high, especially within the graduated colleges of universities. The economic system that Ben Ali used resulted in raising the salaries, raising the prices of many certain goods, and that made some problems, economic problems to the people.
Nurhan, can you hear me? I think you have a problem with the connection. Islam?
Doctor, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but there is very troubles in internet here.
Yeah, okay.
The second stage, which is the preparatory stage, in this stage, both the new system and the old system were conflicting together in order to state which will have power, the old system or the new system. And at the end, the Nahda party had the hand to have the power in the society. In the fourth section.
دكتور في بنت اسمها مريم محمد have a problem في الانترنت كونكشن وخرجت فعايزه تدخل تاني فممكن حضرتك تدخليها بس.
Okay, I haven't got any request. I think I admitted her.
Doctor, can you hear me now?
Yeah, Nurhan.
I'm sorry for all these problems in internet, but internet is very case.
No problem. Just you have like 1.5 minutes. Like try to be brief and.
Okay, doctor. Before internet went out, I was talking about the second stage of implementing the 4 stages of Rosto. which is the preparatory stage. I said that in this stage, the two systems, the old one and the new one, were conflicting or competing together in order to state which one will have the power or the high hand in the country. At first, they tried to have an agreement within them, and finally, the Ennahda party had the power or the hand to have the power in the society.
How?
In the I think it's during the agreement of citizens. As I didn't remember the details of details or many information about Ennahda party.
So what kind of agreement? You made like a statement that the party held like the dominant or the powerful position or control over society, right?
Okay, doctor, that's right.
You said that.
this,
I'm not saying this. So explain how.
Maybe because the party is representing the Islamic power, the Islamic power, or because Tunisia is an Islamic country, and Ennahda party is an Islamic one.
Okay, so let's move to the decision, the third and the fourth phase in like half a minute.
In this stage, decision phase, in general, in this phase, a lot of parties, political parties should appear. The parliament is formed, and also the Ennahda party is continuous in this stage. Then the stage of habituation, or the fourth stage, which is lost till now. Which is till now people يعني in Arabic يعني الأرض الصلبة اللي هم مكملين عليها لغاية دلوقتي في تونس، اللي هي خلاص احنا وصلنا. they achieve democracy, they transform it from the regime of Ben Ali till the democracy. They achieve their goal of the revolution.
Okay, thanks Nurhan. We have next Yara Abdul Maqsood.
Yes, doctor, I'm here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Doctor, يعني أنا I don't know and I have to explain البوينتس يعني in details، فأنا خدت subtitles كده مش in details خالص، فأنا هقولهم يعني. تمام؟ ما كنتش عارفة إن حضرتك عايزانا نشرح كل point في الترم paper in details.
I mean, you have 7 minutes.
Okay, first of all, I talked about, in my paper, I talked about the definition of democracy and the roots of democracy, how it emerged in the first time in different places and different countries. Then I also applied the Stowe model. I talked about the 4 phases. The first phase, which is the background condition. Then the second phase, which is the preparatory phase of democracy. The third phase, the decision phase of democracy. And the fourth phase, which is the habitation phase of democracy. Then I gave a brief introduction about the conditions in Tunisia after 2014 and how the country transformed from authoritarian rule or regime into a democratic one.
Sorry, but why 2014?
Sorry, 2010, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
And how it transformed to a democratic one. And how Tunisia inspired the other Arab countries and become a role model of democracy. Then I talked about the political elites, and I gave a definition of the political elites in order to give the meaning clear when I talk about the rule after 2010, and I talked about the rule in details. Then I talked about the 2 types of elites after 2010. They were the empowered elite and the empowered elite and the ruling elite. I talked about each of them in details, and then I talked about the conflict between
Who are?
the secular...
Can you identify these actors? Can you identify these actors? Who are
Yes,
the ruling?
I defined each
Yeah,
each
I
need in
wanna, yeah, but I wanna know
ما هو
where
انا ما
these
كنتش
acts.
حضرتك عايزاني في البرزنتيشن اقول الديفينيشنز كمان in details، يعني انا بقول البوينتس اللي انا شرحتها في الترم بيبر كل حاجه بالظبط
Yeah,
يعني.
but you have to be clear.
اوكي سوري بس انا مش عارفه اعرفهم دلوقتي، وانا عرفتهم في الترم بيبر بس انا ما كنتش عارفه يعني حضرتك عايزاهم.
Okay.
Okay. Then I talked about the conflict between secularists and the Islamists, and how both of them has the same goal, which is democracy, but they can't never cooperate with each other in order to overcome the dictatorship. Then I talked about the repression in Ben Ali regime and Bourguiba regime, and how they never.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Shall I continue or
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
And how they never allowed for free and fair election, by saying that if we allowed free and fair elections, the Islamists may win and manipulate the country. Okay. Then I talked about Ennahda Party in details. What is the date of origin of Ennahda Party, and how it transformed from an opposition party into a leading one in Tunisia after the revolution. And then I talked about the principles of the democratic transformation after the revolution. The first principle was the cross-party partnership. The second principle was a consensus building. The third principle was crisis management and through compromises and dialogue. Then I talked about the new constitution of Tunisia and how they applied all these principles on it. I talked mainly about two principles. The first one, which was the fundamental rights, including the gender equality and things like that. The third principle, which was the democratic country, the democratic civil country. And then I identified what I mean by mass mobilization. And I also illustrated the role of mass mobilization after 2010, but in details. At the end, I wrote my conclusion about how I see either the mass mobilization or the elite choices has affected the democratic transformation in Tunisia, and my opinion is that both of them has an effective role in this democratic transformation. That's
Yeah. Okay, just in 2 seconds. So if I ask you, like, to put it briefly, how did elite choices help with the establishment of democratic institutions?
I talked about the phases, how the elections in 2014 happened, the free and fair elections. How
I mean, like, with the decision phase. Can you apply this to the Tunisian one, the Tunisian case?
I illustrated the procedures, how they take the procedure in order to reach the democratic the democratic phase.
Like what?
Like Ennahda Party, which was more influential. He took a lot of decisions, and he has an effective role in the elections and in يعني in هو يعني ساعدهم على كده بس.
Okay, thanks, Yara.
Thank you, Doctor.
We have Amr Walid.
Okay, Doctor, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, Doctor.
Amr, turn on your camera.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah. So, since the time of Habib Bourguiba, it was time of the Zain al-Abidin Ben Ali, Tunisian people have suffered from many problems, like human rights violations and tyranny and injustice. Briefly, to get the core of the democratic transition, I should discuss the 4 stages of Rosto first. The first stage of Rosto was the national unity, and Rosto said that nothing is going to happen without the national unity in any transition. First, national unity is the condition of transition from system to another, political system to another. And the people must adhere the political, cultural, economic, and historical roots because it's the unification of society. Sorry. Not to divide people into many groups when moving from a system to another, such as the revolution. It was a mass mobilization, and it get it off the past authority or the rule. To get into the second stage was the preparatory stage. And this stage is the emergence of the crisis, of the conflict between the elites and each others, or the between society and the elites ruling the society. There are many supporters or opponents in these events. And like what happened in the revolution, the people who was opponent to the elites or to Zain al-Abidin Ben Ali in 2010, rejecting the authoritarian rule and carrying out a revolution, and they succeeded in it. So the third stage is the decision stage. It's the stage when the decision is made by political forces to the transition or not. Even though democracy is a process without plan, they do it without a plan. It's manifested by the acceptance of political forces to the intellectual pluralism. To get the core of democracy, they get the intellectual pluralism by a coalition party between the Nahda party and and the other secular parties to get the core of the democracy in the constituent assembly in Tunisia. In this stage, democracy began to be materialized. In the fourth stage, the habituation phase, democracy becomes normal at this point. It would be practiced in between the elites and between the people in society. And in the habituation phase, the elites begin to compete to get the leadership. And the ones who the first ones who succeed succeed in this competition and get the leadership should practice democracy between him and the other parties. Like what Nahda party did in this case, and got to us many sacrifices, like he stepped down with the authority and gives authority to the elections of the technocrat and non-partisan rule, non-partisan hand in the authority. Because the chaos between the people in this time, and to calm down this chaos. That's only those.
Okay, so what kind of choices made in order to sustain or to stabilize the democratic institutions or the institutional rules?
Can you?
So you talked about the assembly, and you talked about some kind of decisions were taken in order to stabilize the system. So what kind of choices these elites made in order to stabilize these rules?
I can remember دكتور بس يعني يعتبر مثلا تغيير القانون، معلش بس يعتبر تغيير القانون مثلا ان هو ما خلاش الموضوع بالاغلبيه مثلا، وبعد كده الحكم بقى تكنوقراطي مثلا. دي احد التشويس او الديسيشنز اللي هم خدوها.
You mentioned something about like deciding to step down in order just to prevent, you know, the escalation of the crisis.
Okay.
And you talked about, you know, this, it's not rule, it's proportional representation in order to guarantee like fair representation of different diverse ideological forces. Any other choices made in the process?
I can't remember them.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Amr.
Thank you.
Salma, Yasser? Salma, Yasser? No? Habiba? Habiba
دكتور مع
Mahmoud
حضرتك؟
Habiba, right?
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
اوكي ثانية واحدة، افتح بس الكاميرا مع حضرتك.
Okay.
انا مش عارفة ايه المشكلة في الكاميرا.
Can we take, you know, the another
اوكي انا مش
presentation?
عارفة ايه المشكلة في الكاميرا بس لانه
Okay, I'll have like Farida and then you try to fix it.
طيب
Okay.
اوكي تمام.
فريدة؟
أوكي.
فريدة جمال علي محمد.
مع حضرتك يا دكتور.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. First, concerning the Tunisia case, the collapsing of Ben Ali regime started when the protests began against the current condition of unemployment and the deterioration of social conditions in the country. The protests, the demonstration of the public facilities, and the fall of number of deaths until it became out of control of the military men, and the president's speech, Ben Ali's speech, or the changes that he served, or the submission of several concessions didn't lead to any benefit until the regime fell when the president escaped to Saudi Arabia in 2011. And with the overthrow of Ben Ali, regime, by the overthrow, new political actors and different modes of involvement began to emerge in a society previously that constrained by a complex system of security and censorship. And around the same time, existing civil society groups and activist networks working in a circuit or subject to significant restrictions have been able to broaden their activities. The reform of association law in September 2011 under the interim government of Prime Minister El-Sibisi that he liberalized the civil society and led to a vibrant landscape of initiatives, unions, associations, and various types of other organizations. And it's normal that the transitional period converting from authoritarian regime to nearly democratic one was not an easy stage, and going through many phases, and the country entered a state of instability that is go through 3 fair and democratic elections until it tried to reach a satisfied situation between and better conditions for citizens. And here our focusing question arose whether the democratic transition was a product of the choices of political elite or the mass mobilization. The outward of democracy emerged in the new state that is based on freedom of expressions, and this was evident in the massive crowd of citizens over the first election in 2011. The Constituent Assembly election that ended with the victory of Nahda the Islamic Renaissance movement, Nahda movement, and the Nahda party for its first principle was being willingness to form a cross-party partnership. The party adopted the principle of pluralism at its inception, another understanding of pluralism goes beyond merely the idea of coexistence. It embraces the partnership with the parties of different intellectual and political backgrounds. اللي هم the parties the secular parties was CPR and التكتل. Okay, sorry. And the outward and the secularists and the Islamist citizens in some Muslim majority countries generally cannot cooperate with one another against a dictatorship. Such citizens need to come to the shared conclusion that they hate the dictatorship more than they hate and fear one another. And the secularist Islamist accommodations were significant to the successful democratic transition in Tunisia. Democracy in Tunisia was beginning to be built with many secular and Islamic democrats working jointly. And here's the decision phase of Rosto. The first stage, the first phase in Rosto was what I said first with the accident or the sparks of anger that begins by the mass mobilization at the citizen Bouazizi who burned himself. This was the spark of anger that began, and then the preparatory phase, the conflict that happened in Tunisia, and then the decision phase, the coalition between the secular parties and the Islamist party that I analyzed it previously, and the Rosto model about different phases and stages of democratic transition, with the separation between transition movement or elite choices that would enable transition, then the habituation phase that actually focus on citizens' values and behaviors that would enable democratic regimes to persist over time. And so the elite choices here were important, were crucial, that they actually didn't have any kind of pact with Ben Ali old regime, and different oppositions from across the ideological or the political spectrum, from different ideological backgrounds. They managed to get together and to have cross ideological aliens in order to converge on the specific issues regarding the constitutional writing and regarding the new legal engineering. How can we add a constitute assembly that will drive the new constitution, and what kind of regime form a political system that we are going to have, or the electoral system, majoritarian or proportional representation, and then they opted proportional representation that would allow different ideological forces from within the opposition camps to have some sort of representation. To the new democratic regime, and the central element or the feature here is the kind of that they managed to get along or to form a coalition or across ideological aliens with the leftist forces and the Democratic Party in order to stabilize the new democratic regime and to enable the process of constitutional writing and legal engineering to get fully obvious or to become clear. And so the elite choices were essential in order to stabilize the new democratic rules, and after that some political assassinations happened with some sort of polarization, some sort of rising social opposition and deepening social polarization started to emerge in Tunisia after the political assassination of some leftist forces that pushed or gave away to other extremists to elaborate other demands, like integrating Sharia law into the new constitution. And on the other hand, secular forces, they started to mobilize against this cross ideological aliens. So this actually started to destabilize the entire political system and to push or erode the legitimate unified upon with which the new regime actually was established. So to sum up here, the democratic transition in Tunisia started by the spark of anger that begins with the mass mobilization, and after their success in achieving their desire or to overthrow the Ben Ali regime, a political and an institutional gap occurred, or we can say a political vacuum in the state. The people's enthusiasm for building a new democratic state that expresses freedom of opinion and be a model for social justice was not sufficient or was not adequate to build the foundations of the state and govern this gap. So here we can say that the democracy was a product of mass mobilization, but the role of political elites was the crucial variable in maintaining this democratic transition.
Just a second.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, just a second to wrap it up.
Oh, okay.
We don't have much. Yeah, you already exceeded. Yeah.
أنا آسفة. هو بس آخر حاجة اللي هو that democracy was a product of mass mobilization, but the role of political elites was the crucial variable in maintaining the democratic transition.
Okay, thanks, Farida. So we're waiting for Habiba to join in again.
أيوة دكتور مع حضرتك.
حبيبة؟
أيوة.
Okay, Habiba, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, doctor. I chose the topic of Tunisian revolution, and now I will briefly explain what I wrote on this issue. As we know that the Arab region has recently witnessed many democratic transformations that have not been witnessed for many decades, which was known as the Arab Spring, and it began in Tunisia. Tunisia before 2011 revolution didn't enjoy democracy, rather it was an authoritarian state like the rest of the countries in Arab region. The discussion of the elite was not about the democratic issue in terms of political participation and peaceful rotation of power, but about the complete absence of democracy. First of all, I will talk first about the concept of democracy. The concept of democracy is a widespread concept, and we find that there is no system of government that doesn't consider democracy to be one of its main features and characteristics. So democracy is a form of government in which the people have the power to choose the ruling legislators. The basic pillars of democracy include freedom of opinion, expression, equality, membership, consent, vote, the right to life, and the rights of minorities. After that, I explained democratizations, democratization is the process of transition to a system that adopts political pluralism and recognizes the existence of opposition to the ruling regime. And this system guarantees freedom of opinion and expression and believes in popular participation and peaceful change of government through periodic free and fair elections. Much of the success of democratization depends on the ability of the civil society to unite across competing political parties and disparate social classes into a broad front or movement. There is a set of indicators that indicate that there is a democratic transition, like or including elections, such as Constituent Council elections in 2011, legislative election in 2014, and presidential elections. ممكن أقول لحضرتك بس باختصار كده الفيكتورز في كل elections. نتكلم أول حاجة عن Council elections in 2011. The results of these elections were the victory of the Islamist Ennahda movement with large majority, and the announcement of these results angered the residents, and they burned some facilities in the city. Sorry. Right. Okay. تاني حاجة legislative elections in 2014. The victors are Nida Tunis, and this party managed to win a majority in the first elections less than 2.5 years after its establishment. And the Free Periodic Union, and it's the second party that rose in the legislative elections in a remarkable way. The Popular Front, a Afaq Tunis party, the Democratic Current. Although this party is although since its formation, this party, أنا بتكلم على Democratic Current, this party gained 3 seats. After that, the Initiative Party, and for the Nahda movement, its position has declined compared to the previous elections, moving from the first to the second place. And presidential elections, and it were considered the last step in the process to Tunisians transition to democracy after the 2011 revolution. And Al-Sibsi, the candidate of the Nida Tunis party, became president according to what was announced by the independent high authority in the elections in Tunisia. Okay. And last but not least, the role of the civil society. Independent civil society organizations resisted tyranny and preserved their their existence, which enables them to contribute effectively in trying to correct the course of the post-revolution situation. After the popular movement in Tunisia, we found that the number of organizations and associations is constantly increasing in number, type, and specializations. So civil society has had an effective role in changing the events and putting pressure on the government on one hand and on the National Constituent Assembly on the other hand. Tunisia has succeeded in the process of democratic transition and was a glimmer of hope for many Arab countries such as Egypt, Libya, and Yemen. And we mustn't forget that the success was thanks to the elite management of the democratic transformation process, as the elite succeeded in its tasks in managing the country in the transitional phase until the elections for the National Constituent Assembly were held, and legislative elections and presidential elections also. Thank you.
Okay, so how, Habiba, can you elaborate a little more on this? How like elites managed or made choices during this period between 2011 2014? So basically the decision phase. Yeah, basically the decision phase, because this is like the core, the essence of the paper. Like from your memory, what kind of choices that helped with the process?
Choices.
Not necessarily in detail. Not in detail, just like the broader framework. What kind of choices?
هو الدور بتاعها انها كانت الليد مانجمنت ده في الديموكراتيك ترانسفورميشن بروسيس، كان ان هو عمل مانجنج للكانتري في الترانزيشنال فيز اللي كانت عندنا لحد ما حصلت الالكشن بتاعت الناشونال كونستيتوينت اسامبلي والليجيسليتيف الكشنز.
Yeah. You can be brief and clear and simple at the same time.
أنا مش عارفة أوصلها في الورقة خالص لأن الورقة.
We still have 1 minute, so just try to refresh your mind up.
يا دكتور مش عارفة أوصلها، الوقت مش هيساعدني بصراحة.
Okay, okay, thanks Habiba.
Thank you دكتور, thank you.
Thanks Habiba. So we have Minnatullah Muhammad Sabri.
Yes, يا دكتور. Start أبدأ.
Yeah.
Okay. I will talk. I talked about the role of the mass mobilization and the elite in Tunisia, and I will explain that through the Rosto model. The first background condition, it's about the national unity. It's about the national unity, as in Tunisia, people get out through the revolution because of the sake of the national interest. The people have one political thought. The second one is the preparatory phase, is about the conflict between the society and the ruling class, as there were a conflict in Tunis between the people and the ruling class اللي هو بن علي because of dictatorial system of the government. The third is the decision phase, is about the agreement, as there was agreement of all people and all political parties in Tunisia of the idea of democracy. النهضة party in Tunis established the idea of multi-party system. The fourth is the habituation phase, as democracy become a habit, and the people establish the idea of the real democracy. There was a free and fair election, and the announcing of the new Tunisian constitution.
I can't hear you. Are you still talking?
No, I finish.
That's all?
Yes.
Okay, so can you elaborate on the decision phase?
Decision phase is the agreement of all people in Tunisia of the idea of democracy, of the real democracy, establishing of the multi-party system in Tunisia after the
What do you mean
revolution.
by what do you mean by multi-party system?
Because before the revolution there only يعني كان مفيش غير اللي هو حزب واحد وبعد كده after the revolution there were election and parties election والنهضة party يعني بقى في أحزاب كتير لو بعد الثورة.
Okay.
Yes.
How did they operate? How did they function?
مش عارفة بصراحة. يعني هو ده بس اللي أنا كاتباه عن الأحزاب.
Okay, so what kind of other choices they made? Political elites, this is like the core. This is like the central argument you should have based the paper on.
مش عارفة يا
So
دكتور.
it's a multi-party system, like they allowed for other parties to compete and contest any elections. So what other choices?
مش عارفة بصراحة يا دكتور.
Okay. So let's move to Rana Khalid Muhammad Abdul Wahab.
Yes, doctor. Can you hear me?
Yes, Rana. Go ahead.
Wait, doctor. My camera is not working. Wait, no, sorry.
So can we move to the following one until you fix this?
Okay, okay.
Okay. Karma?
Yes, doctor, can you hear me?
Yeah.
ثانية واحدة بس افتح الكاميرا.
Karma, unmute.
Yeah, sorry. First, I'm gonna take a brief on how the Tunisian revolution started. It all started when Mohamed El Bouazizi, as a 26 years old unemployed man, set himself fire outside the municipal office of Sidi Bouzaid. He was protesting government corruption. The local officials requested bribes and take the goods he was selling from him. And then he inspired the Tunisian people to revolt against the poverty and the corruption and the political recession of the government.
Mm-hmm.
The Tunisian revolution started, and hundreds of people were killed, and then Zain al-Abidin ibn Ali he removed the Minister of Interior, Rafiq Belhaj, as he was in charge of the using of excessive power against the protesters, and then he vowed to set an investigation committee to investigate the force that were used against protesters. But these previous efforts of Zain al-Abidin ibn Ali didn't quell rights, and then he appeared on national television and make his concession in January 13, 2011. But the concession of Zain al-Abidin ibn Ali didn't satisfy the protesters. They kept the clash between them and the security forces, and a state of emergency was declared and in January 14, and the Tunisian state media announced the dissolving of the government and that Zain al-Abidin fled to Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
And then the Tunisian revolution like didn't return to authority like many Arab countries did, but it like made its way to democracy. I'm gonna talk about the role of mobilization and elite choices in both in every and each phase of the Rostow's model of democratic transition. So first, talking about the background condition, it's clear that Tunisian people like have the sense of nationality and belonging throughout the history, and that was clear in the revolution, the Jasmine Revolution. And then I'm gonna go to the second phase, which is the preparatory phase. I'm first gonna talk about the mass mobilization. Its role of the role of mass mobilization in the preparatory phase. But first, I'm going to talk about an incident that happened in 2008. It's called the protest movement, or the rights of Kafsa. It took the poor areas there. They protested against government corruption, and there was a huge conflict between protesters and police officers and any representatives of the government there. And from that incident, it was observed that Tunisians could make that again in the future, and we saw that in the Tunisian Revolution. And then talking about the role of elite in the preparatory phase. First, another party won the elections and framed the government, and the assassin.
But Karma, I just have like a quick question. Why didn't you put like the events, you know, of 2008 as a background condition? Why it's like in the preparation phase?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's right. Okay.
After Bouzaid like set himself on fire, that would be like, you know,
yeah, right,
the one that ignited, you know, the triggering point or the triggering event.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, go ahead.
So after another party won the elections, after that, there are incidents that happened. Two of the leftist activists, their name is Shukri Belaid and Mohammed Barahmi, got assassinated. And that nearly ruined the transition to democracy process. But because of the pressure of civil society and like trade unions and new political party alliances forced the government to restore peace and order and to crack down the radical Islamists. So because of this movement of opposing the Islamist party, Al-Nahda, so Al-Nahda stepped down on September 2013 by following the demonstrations of people. And we will talk about the stepping down of Al-Nahda also in the decision phase. Okay, give me a second. And moving to the decision phase. So the major factor in bringing down Ben Ali's regime is that Tunisians' will to accomplish their transformation without outside intervention contribute to the credit. And under the pressure of highly mobilized civil society, which through continuous demonstrations rejected the political delay of the interim authorities, and that yielded to increase the pressure from society to allow a complete democratic transition. But after the conflict between political parties was dissolved by the resigning of the Al-Nahda party that we talked about in the preparatory phase. They resigned like to solve the problem, to settle down the events, and pave the way to the new democracy, to continue the democracy process. So Al-Nahda party showed a respect for the democratic process. And then, like, we conclude from that the acceptance of a variety of political ideologies or parties within the democratic system, as each has an opinion, and a right to participate in politics. And then by the new elections, the rule of one-party system in Tunisia was over, and there was a coalition government. Then I'll move to the last phase.
Like a few seconds. Yeah, you're already over the time. Yeah.
Gonna talk briefly.
Yeah.
The habituation phase, like people went to polls again to choose their new president in 2014, and the party of Ben Ali, the RCD, which the Democratic Constitutional Rally, was dissolved, and the military forces, like, they maintain a commitment that they will not interfere in politics unless they're gonna protect them from the previous regime. Like, it's all become a new reality to Tunisians that like they are in democratic system.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks, Karma. We have Rana, or still she's trying to join us?
I'm here, Doctor. Can you hear me?
Rana? Yeah.
First, I start with the Tunisian Revolution and uprisings. Why Tunisian Revolution happened? Through absolute force, Ben Ali's regime sustained itself, an impressive security establishment controlled the population, and any form of political opposition. The constitution to politicians on presidential mandates. بس بعد ما بن علي جه يعني هو لغى الكلام ده كله عشان يفضل في السلطة. Rising there كان في high unemployment, وكان في there was corruption, and there was differences on the other hand between the northern urban and the littoral areas dominated by manufacturing, and they benefited from investment and foreign trade. And on the other hand, the southern and western centers experienced much higher unemployment and poverty. وبالتالي يعني التونيجيانز عملوا revolution عشان يشيلوا بن علي. Then I'll talk about the 4 phases of ROS2. First, I'll talk about background condition. The concept of this model is national unity. It appears in the Tunisian Revolution as it was a manifestation of the revolution. That's it. Then I'll talk about the second phase, background condition. The preparatory phase. This phase is about the conflict between social classes and Islamists, which is another party, and Tunisian people. Then I'll talk about the third decision phase. The third phase, which is the decision phase, it's the transition. It's when another party decided to step down from 30. Fourth phase, it's a habituation phase. They made elections, and they decided. Then they and Tunisia, I don't know. يعني عايزة أقول إن هي أصبحت إن هي بقى ديمقراطية وكده بس.
Okay. So what kind of choices made in order to uphold democratic institutions?
I didn't prepare, but choices that Tunisian people decided to go against their regime.
No, the question is how elite choices helped with the establishment of democratic institutions or facilitated the democratic transition in Tunisia.
Sorry, I didn't prepare this. Sorry, I don't know.
Okay. So Islam Usama Abdullah?
Yes, doctor, can you hear me?
Yeah, turn on the camera.
Okay. Firstly, I chose the case study of the Tunisia because I interested in how the country that turned from the authoritarian regime to the democratic one. So firstly, I can show in my paper that in the last period of Ben Ali, in his ruling era, that is how there is a much case that it's monopolizing the media and the press, violation of the human rights, and how he removed all the civil laws and the rights of the people for his own interest. So firstly, I begin with the causes of the Tunisian revolution, and this has come from the cooperation between the mass mobilization of the all people, which represented the will of all people, and some elites. And this has come from the role of Ennahda Party, that he worked to unify all the people in Tunisia and some elites, and how to turn the authoritarian regime of Ben Ali to the democratic one. Okay, and this has come from جه على مراحل كتير. تمام، منها the Constituent Council elections in 2011, and then the legislative elections in 2014, and the presidential elections, and after this أو يعني على مر المراحل دي كلها بدأت تونسيا تتحول للديمقراطيك، إن بدأ يبقى فيه يعني بدأ يبقى فيه presidential election حقيقية، مش إن حد هيفضل فترة طويلة. يعني بدأ يبقى فيه حرية للرول اوف ميديا والبريس، بدأ يكون فيه competition between البارتيز. بس وممكن بقى نطبق الفيزز بتاعتنا، ان هي the first one that ان النهضة بارتي حاول يونيفاي الناس كلهم، حاول ان هم لازم يغيروا القرار او الاوثوريتاريان ريجيم بتاعتهم. بس هو بصراحة انا نسيت كل الكلام. انا كنت مجهز برزنتيشن كويس جدا ونسيت كل الكلام، يعني مش عارف اقول حاجة حقيقي. Doctor, I don't hear you. Can you hear me?
So let's get to the core. How did elite choices, what kind of choices, these elites or these political elites or the central players made in order to facilitate the transition?
I think this I forget، يعني أنا نسيت كل حاجة حقيقي.
اوكي اسلام.
طب سوري، بس انا ممكن يعني اقفل، لان بس انا هاف ابوينتمنت مع دكتور مع والدتي، فممكن اقفل.
اوكي
ماشي، ثانك يو دكتور، معلش انا اسف.
نور خالد.
Yes, doctor. I'm here. Okay, first of all, my research question was what is the reason behind democracy in Tunisia, whether it's the product of elite choices or mass mobilization was the real reason. I started by define the major concept in the question, which is democracy. It's a system of government in which people choose their legislators, and it's characterized by free and fair election, rotation of power, and freedom of expression. It don't have a unified expression, but it's concept, but it's the profitable one for me. Mass mobilization, it's a process which people are cooperate with each other in order to facilitate participating in decision-making process and to make change and to achieve the general will. Elite choices, they are a small political elite. They are a small group of people who are responsible for some institution in the country, and they usually seeking power in order to reduce accountability. Coming to the methodology that I used in my research, I worked on the qualitative approach in order to provide in-depth analysis for the case of Tunisia, and I used the in order to reach the causal arrangements that led Tunisia to democratization. So I studied Tunisia in a historical sequence. So I focused on the process that changes over time.
What process? What kind of process? What do you mean by process that changed over time?
The process of transition. Process of revolution, then the change of the authoritarian regime into democracy. I mean that.
So you mentioned historically. So what time period you're talking about?
The time period of Bourguiba, and then how Ben Ali put a trap for him and rule Tunisia. I started by this point.
How he overthrew him. Okay.
Okay. I applied the 4 phases of Rousseau. The first phase, which is as a background, so I provided a historical overview of Tunisia and how Ben Ali ruled Tunisia with an iron fist, and how the rule of Ben Ali was a tragic experience for Tunisian, and as he arrested many people and younger people as well, and he assaulted the investigative journalists, and he tried to destroy any trial for freedom of expression. And I also moved to explain how the Islamic opposition started to emerge in the period of economic crisis, and how it gains the majority supported by his charitable work in the crisis, without any political. He was outside the politics, and the charitable work was still active, so he gains the majority support. And then the second pass, which is the preparatory pass, I talked about the revolution and how it the revolution opens a way for the Islamic party and the other party that was banned under Ben Ali's regime to restore its power and to take a decision that achieves the general will for the people. And the third pass, which is the decision pass, I talked about how Ennahda party discussed about and compromise and cooperate with the 3-party coalition, and they compromise on many issues, such as not including reference to Sharia in the constitution, and the idea of gender equality and the role of women, and also the institution design in the political system. These choices, which led Ennahda party to gain the popular support and the trust of his opposition. And the habituation pass, which is I talked about how democracy persists in Tunisia and under Essebsi in 2014, and how he took many decisions that facilitate the process, facilitate perceiving democracy, as he regulates the marriage. Regulates the marriage law and the heritage law, and he also contributed by a big deal in the perceiving democracy in Tunisia. And then I ended by the findings of the theory, which is democracy in Tunisia was a product of elected choices and how they compromise and cooperate with each other in order to achieve the general will of the people. And as that mass mobilization was just facilitate the process of opening the way for the elite choices, and especially in Nahda party to restore its power and to make decisions that achieve the general will and perceive democracy.
Was it alone in the political scene?
No.
Or did you single out Nahda?
Yes, it was with another two secular parties, which are the Takaful Party and the CPRS, I think. But what I remember is that the party who compromised on many issues was Ennahda Party, as he was preferred the parliamentary system, but they compromised with each other in order to gain the trust of his opposition, that he doesn't want to make Tunisia an Islamic state, and he gained his opposition trust as well.
Okay, thanks, Noor. Thank you. So we'll have one more presentation. I'll give you like 7-minute break after that, okay? So let's have Mariam Ahmed Mahmoud.
أيوة دكتور أنا هنا.
Yeah, go ahead, Mariam.
Okay. So first, I will let's quickly كده highlight the brief of the study case that we are here trying to know who had the major role in the democratization process of Tunisia, either the elite or the mass mobilization. حضرتك كده مش سامعاني؟
Yeah, this is great. Yeah.
طب تمام أعيد تاني؟
No, it's okay. Just continue on.
طيب تمام. Okay, ماشي. I divided my paper into 3 parts. I first talked about the political developments or the يعني history of political life in Tunisia after the independence from France. يعني بعد ما حبيب بورقيبة had his presidential term, and then زين العابدين, and they were both يعني there was no like rotation of powers, there was no diversity of political opinions, يعني they were like dictators. بتاع ده ثانية واحدة. Then this like made people created this national unity, or the like the one opinion that they had enough from this system. They
Mariam, the voice.
They didn't want this system anymore. Then I talked about. I will best explain the theoretical framework. First, we have like two scholars. The first scholar, who was Rostow's model, he divided the democratization process into 4 phases. The first phase is background condition. He said that the national unity is the background condition in the democratization process. Then the preparatory phase, which he said that was the conflict and the mass mobilization. Then the decision making. The decision making is basically what's the decision that the elite will take in order to democratize the country or make this transition يعني work out.
Then the habituation phase. Then come another scholar who's O'Donnell. O'Donnell, he said that he talked about the uncertainty and pact making. This was actually like يعني emphasizing the third phase of Rostow's model, which is the decision making that was also made by the elites. Then I talked about the mass
Yeah, but
mobilization.
is there any difference between the pact making Guillermo and Schmitter, O'Donnell and Schmitter talked about? Yeah.
What I understood that يعني the pact making is a step of the يعني is a step
what kind of pacts O'Donnell and Schmitter talked about?
لا بصراحة أنا مش فاكرة قوي، أنا مش كاتبة ديتيلز قوي في السيرة نفسها، أنا مركزة أكتر على الإيفنتس في تونس، يعني مش عارفة.
Okay, anyone guys? Anyone has any intervention or comment on this? Okay, so go ahead. So perhaps someone else, would mention this in his or her presentation. Yeah.
Then I moved on to the mass mobilization. The mass mobilization, which is the Tunisian revolution that followed Rostow's model, as after this sense of unity that they want to remove this system, the masses came out in the second phase and create like a conflict. There was a guy that called Mohammed Bouazizi, I can't pronounce the name. He protested and lit himself on fire, which this event actually inspired other protests throughout the country against بقى corruption of Ben Ali's system يعني, and there was poverty, and then they succeeded in ousting Zain al-Abidin. Then I moved to the يعني elites بقى, political elites. There are two contradicting poles in يعني في Tunisia. There was the Islamists and the secularists. The relationship was a big in the past, before the revolution, the relationship was a big reason that democracy couldn't be achieved in Tunisia.
How?
The Islamists saw the secularists, they are not following God's يعني from the point of view, they are not following God's orders or God's laws, and the secularists saw that Islamist ideologies are يعني anti-democratic. They can from this.
Okay,
from this
but you have some information in the readings telling you something else about like different incidents, where they got together and they collaborated and they had like joint declarations.
In the في كده اللي هو 18 October committee in 2005 they like gathered and make a committee. صح ولا أنا
Yeah, you're right. And before in 2003 yeah.
لا بصراحة دي ما كتبتهاش، بس أنا كتبت عن 2005 لما عملوا الكوميتي دي كان قبل كده. دي بس اللي كتبتها بصراحة، ما أعرفش.
Okay.
2003 بس فهم بقى after بقى الفيز بقى بتاعت الديسيجن ميكينج اللي هي بتاعت كان روستوز موديل كان بيتكلم عليها. they بقى after removing Ben Ali, they بقى wanted to make like a يعني coalition to reach an agreement on how we will make democracy in our country. So they agreed on the idea of making a constituent assembly and making a proportional representation as electoral system. They made also a coalition of 3 parties: النهضة, التكتل, and the Congress of the Republic اللي هو CPR. فبس this was a consensus made by political elites and يعني a pact making برضو as يعني Rostow's model and O'Donnell assumed. بعد كده حصل
there is a difference between this pact and what O'Donnell mentioned. Okay, just like keep it as it is for now. I'm going to comment on this later. Okay.
Okay. ماشي. Then there was this crisis of they didn't agree on the constitution making and the speed of making of it. They wanted to make they wanted to make it in 1 year, and then and they suspended the work of NSA.
Why؟
يعني why؟ لأن هما there was like assassination of two secularists that was criticizing the Islamists and النهضة work يعني, and then there was like the copycat of تمرد. They wanted to remove the يعني the NSA, then تقريبا مصطفى بن جعفر he then suspended the work of NSA.
Okay. And what happened? What kind of choices again made at this moment in order to save the institutional rules and to preserve, you know, what they gained from this transition?
Honestly, I don't remember قوي. I didn't focus on these details. I assumed that we will just talk about broad lines.
Yeah, this is still broad lines. Come on.
مش عارفة.
Okay, just in 2 seconds. Can you summarize? Do you want to say something?
الhabituation phase بقى ان هم خلاص يعني the democratic techniques and recruitment of the politicians and new elites it will بقى يعني there appear the democratic beliefs among them that they just citizens and population they will fit into the new structure and the relationship among politicians the ruling elites يعني democratization أو democracy بقى هيبقى يعني will arise يعني بس.
Okay, thanks, Mariam. Okay, guys, let's have like 7 minutes and then we will come back, okay? And we will have like Khalid Gamal Farouk after that, okay?
Okay, doctor.
Okay. Salma, let's talk about the problem later. Guys, are you here?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, so Khalid?
Yes, doctor. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you see me?
This way. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, first of all, I just want to illustrate my content paper. And while I'm introducing my content, I just would tell you or talking about the idea of ROS2 and what I understand or how I apply this in my paper. Okay, first of all, I started with the question of the case: does democracy is the product of elite choices, or it's all about the mass mobilization? The mass mobilization is the crucial variable of the transition. So to answer such a question, I just started my paper with an introduction talking about generally democratization and what is the difference between democratization and liberalization, as it's important to distinguish between liberalization and democratization, as it's the two terms are not dissimilar at all. I'm not telling that that liberalization is an opposing of democratization, but liberalization could exist in the authoritarian regimes. You know, leaders and rulers could facilitate liberalization in the regimes as a sort of they can allow to access the needed of or the help needed from citizens without altering the regime from authoritarian to democratization or democratic regime. Then, according to Rostov's perspective in this theory, he said that democracy is not a uniform transition process that occurred all around the world with the same inputs and same outputs. He said that it's different from place to another. So I moved in my paper to a quick overview about the history of democratization. I talked about the three waves of democratization, and I briefly differentiate between them. And then I moved to the Arab uprising. In all, not only Tunisia. I talked about the Arab uprising in the whole, and then I make a little bit comparison between the Arab uprising, which is considered for some scholars and some political scientists as the fourth wave of democratization. You know, so I just make a comparison between the fourth wave, the Arab uprising, and the European uprising, which are the previous waves I talked about. And I talked about the challenges that the Arab uprising faced that not occurred with the European uprising or the European democratization. So one of the main challenges is that the European regimes after the collapse of the Soviet Union were all authoritarian regimes, but that not occurred in the Arab uprising. The Arab uprising, we will find the diversity in the regimes of them. Like we will find the monarchy and hybrid and republic regimes. So that was not in the favor of achieving the dynamic process of toward the democratic.
Yeah, but this is according to the literature. This is the fourth wave. If you meant like the one occurred in East Europe.
The fourth wave, what? Please, sorry.
That was the fourth wave.
The fourth wave was that occurred in Europe?
Yeah, after the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Okay, that's an information.
The third wave is Southern Europe and Latin America.
Okay. Then I moved specifically to Tunisian, and as also Rostov said in his theory, that the theory must cover the period of time just before and just after. So I talked about Tunisia before the revolution and talked about Tunisia after the revolution. I talked mainly about the Tunisia under Ben Ali's regime. I talked about the corruption and his fake promises he did, and his way in reforming constitution and removing the limitation of president in governing, and the fake liberator of women. And then I talked about the revolution itself, and I talked about the events that occurred, who did what, when, and how, just to know or to answer the question of does it mass mobilization do the difference, or
yeah, flesh this sentence out. Who did what and when?
Yes, okay. I just talked bravely about that in my paper, and in my point of view, I see that mass mobilization, who did the first step, who really do the change, who really was the product of democratization. But of course, political elites have a crucial role in the transition to democracy, as their awareness in the election in 2014. The election witnessed the first president that elected fully with democratic way. So that's it.
So what happened before?
What happened for what?
So what's your answer? How did you answer the question?
I did answer the question that the mass mobilization really do the difference.
How?
And by revoluting and by rejecting the regime, and they don't like the regime, and they don't like the dictatorship regime that and the corruption that's happened in the
yeah. And how can you say how did you set away elite choices in this model?
I said that elite choices also had a fundamental role in the transition, as like the choices they take, the cooperation between the Islamic parties and the secular parties to counter the work of the Nahda, and to totally form a constitution. That choice
to what? To counter?
Yeah.
What did the other parties did?
Yeah, the Nahda specifically.
No, what did you say? They faced the Nahda?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that right or wrong?
They formed a coalition with leftist and secular parties.
Yeah, I said they formed the coalition.
Okay, so what kind of choices? Succinctly, what kind of choices made in order to facilitate democratic transition?
What kind of choices?
What are the essence of elite choices?
No, I really don't know.
Yeah, okay, Khalid, thanks. So we have Mohammed Al-Husseini.
Yes, is my voice clear?
Yeah.
The camera is not working now.
No, I see you.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So first of all, it was started in 2010 for the revolution or the uprising and the mass demonstrations that took place in Tunisia, and all what we know about Mohamed Bouazizi and setting himself on fire because of conflict with local authorities or so. But we have to go to the year 2003 and the start of dialogues between the secularists and the Islamists in Europe, in France and the UK. The place of Rashid Ghannouchi was exiled there. And these dialogues proved to be very useful after the revolution, because that resulted in the coalition that ruled for some period after that. In the year 2005, the secularist politicians and the Islamist politicians had the 18th of October Coalition for Rights and Freedoms, where they asked for political reforms and for more freedoms and setting free the political prisoners and so. That coalition didn't achieve great results at that time, but the idea of dialogue between secularist politicians and Islamist politicians at that time was like the essence of the coalitions that happened between them after the revolution and how they carried out. Rashid Ghannouchi, who was the head of the Ennahda party, was exiled since 1991 in the UK. And during his time there, he did some ideological reformation and kind of rethink the thoughts of the Islamist politicians there. He knew that Ben Ali's regime sold himself by sending that image of the Islamists as kind of extremist, or that if they reach power, they would result in crisis like what happened in Algeria, and the wars there in the 90s, and he sent his image as if he's the progressive liberal president. So Ghannouchi knew that he had to do some work to change that. The second phase after the revolution, the secularists.
You talked about the preparatory phase? What phase you're talking about right now?
I talked about the background.
Yeah, this one,
and
the
the
second
national
one.
unity.
So the second
preparatory
one?
phase.
Yeah.
Preparatory phase, okay.
Yeah.
So after 2010, they had the Higher Commission for the Achievement of the Goals of the Revolution, which had in it different ideologies, different parties, and Islamists and secularists, and all that was in that. And they cooperated to achieve the goals, and they knew that in that crucial time, the division was the worst thing to happen to them. They knew that in this phase, they needed to be united. And that's the difference between what happened in Tunisia and happened in Egypt, mainly after the revolution, the division. Then we can talk about the decision phase. So the coalition ruled. The coalition had in it Ennahda party, CPR, and Takatul. So in the decision phase, these parties or these party leaders made important decisions. Forming the coalition to rule was important. Then they had some commission to know what to do, or to think about what to do in that time. The commission decided that what to do is to have a parliamentary body before.
What commission? You mean Ben Ashur?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So they decided to have a parliamentary body or parliamentary election to have legislative body at that time, but not a presidential election, because they at that time did not know whether they're going to be a presidential system or semi-presidential or parliamentary. So they had election and had a legislative body they needed. In the parliamentary election, they decided to go by proportional representation, and because they knew that they needed different ideologies and different parties to be in the parliament. Because if they went by first past the post, that would result in Ennahda achieving absolute majority or great majority. More than 90% of the seats would go to Ennahda, and they did not need that at that time. They needed representation of different ideologies. So what happened is that they went by proportional representation, and they had that coalition government that had in it Ennahda and secular parties. Ennahda had about 40% of the seats.
We have like half a minute to go, okay?
Half a minute last.
Yeah. So be quick.
Okay. So there were also crises in 2013, the assassination of two secular opposition leaders, and الباجي قائد السبسي calling the legislative body they have unconstitutional in its first anniversary. So Ben Jafar, the head of that body, had to do some decisions. He talked to the different parties and talked to different political personas, and they had some agreements. They were able to have their constitution in 2014, and they handled it. Also, some another important thing in elite choices is the military, or military elites choices. They have pride in being professional military, so they did not engage in that process, democratic transition at all. So that was useful.
But how did you place this in the model? The model is talking about elite choices and mass mobilizations.
I focused on elite choices because I think that elite choices is the answer. Elite choices, what made the difference? Elite choices are what made the revolution succeed in Tunisia and what made the revolution fall or collapse in Egypt because of wrong elite choices made in.
Okay, how did they keep it from collapsing?
In Tunisia?
Yeah.
By making the right choices, but by knowing the common enemies, that the secularists are not the enemies to the Islamists, and vice versa, by knowing that they had to cooperate and work together and making the right choices, like Ben Jafar.
Yeah, effectively.
Ben Jafar made in
yeah?
Yes.
In what? Yeah, go ahead. Ben Jafar what?
And the Constitution Assembly, and working with different politicians and doing all that in that time.
Yeah, but what did Ben Jafar? You were talking about something. You were about to talk about certain choice.
Yes, the choice to make all parties in that body have one.
In the beginning,
vote in a process that led to the 2014 constitution.
Any other choices made?
By Ben Jafar?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or the governing coalition, the Troika.
Is a Troika the three parties? They decided to leave office in 2014 and to handle it to technocrat government that would lead, because you know that there was some kind of division or sorrow in the country after the assassinations and some.
Okay. Thanks, Mohammed. Thank you. Ziad Mohammed?
Yes, doctor.
Yeah, go ahead.
I started talking about the topic by mentioning the democracy, and I explained what's meant by democracy. That it's a political system of popular participation, competitive elections, and human and civil rights, as we mentioned in the lectures of week 8, I think. Then I moved to the theory of democratization and what's meant by it. First, some scholars said that it's the period between the collapse of the authoritarian regime and the first democratic elections. But other political scientists stated that it is far from that. It's also how the alternation of power after that, alternation in power. Then I discussed it in Tunisia. So we are discussing here the 3-player game and try to get to opposition groups or parties who do not trust each other in a way to work with each other against the hardline authoritarian regime. I discussed the historical context of Bourguiba and Ben Ali, and how they established their authoritarian regime and dictatorship presidential period. May I summarize it? That the reasons of the revolution, sorry, give me a second. That there was no free and fair elections in their period, as they worried that the Muslim extremists would gain the power in Tunisia. So this would limit freedoms. So their reason was that they are saving the prosperity of the country and the economic. So there were kind of high employment, especially among the youth generation, nepotism, bad governance, corruption, repression, lack of freedom, and aging leader, which prevailed in other MENA countries too, were among the major factors led to the uprising. Before January 14, 2011, several political scientists believed that dictatorship only could be collapsed by military coup or external intervention, or by well-organized political movement against the leadership, and as they should have strong leader. But Tunisian peaceful uprising could in 23 days destroy the 23 dictatorship ruling without any external intervention or any leader to them. So they moved
or any
through
what? Without external intervention or what?
Or any leader for them.
Oh, okay.
Before the revolution, secularists and Muslim leaders, they don't think that they don't need each other to get rid of this authoritarian regime. But before in 2003, they had a meeting in France that concluded 20 organizations, which made a first step to a coalition between the secularists and Muslim groups. 155 members of various groups were tasked with forming a commission of Ben Ashur. A key provision to Ben Ashur attorney agreed on was that the polity-wide election should be to elect a constituent assembly, but not a president, because it was agreed that the decision to whether the political system should be presidential or parliamentary or semi-presidential was to the people. Should be made by elected constituent assembly and not an unelected group. In order to apply the democratic regime and not to return back to the authoritarian regime, they preferred not to use the British system, as the Ennahda party would get 90% of the seats. So Ghannouchi wanted to estimate the proportional representation system, and that Ennahda wouldn't get more than 40% of the seats of the parliament. So they need to form a coalition with one or two secular parties. An outcome he believed would help the democracy to get started in Tunisia, because it would limit Islamic majoritarianism. Then we transfer to the alternation of power in 2013. By the December of this year, it had managed to re-equilibrate and essentially pass an inclusionary, if at time excessively unclear. In January 2014, during the lead-up of the first free parliamentary and presidential election in Tunisian history in 2014, Ennahda party mistakenly assumed that they would win the first plurality of the parliament, and so again played a leading role in any government ruling coalition. They were worried that if they ran a presidential candidate, they would return back to the authoritarian regime, and the democratic regime would collapse again. They decided, after many internal arguments and debates in the Shura Council, not to have a candidate for the presidential election. There were some indicators that in Nida Tunis coalition led by PG Sipsi, comprising anti-Nahda secularists and many former activists of Ben Ali's Democratic Party. was gaining strength, so they debated again whether they should nominate a candidate or no. Ghannouchi played a major role in deciding not to enter the elections. He claimed that Ennahda didn't want to break promises made, as it turned out in the parliamentary election. Thus, Essebsi's party won the elections, so they had the right to nominate the prime minister. 3 weeks later, Essebsi won the elections of the president. Also, the Tunisian military representatives didn't want to involve in the political arguments and not to have representative in the parliament or the presidential elections. So we have results of the democratic transition. By end of 2014, Tunisia has finished its free and fair elections for a new parliament and presidency, which was agreed upon the constitution, had a peaceful alternation of power, and
to recap.
Yes.
The answer of the question, elite choices and democratic transition. How did this happen?
That Ghannouchi said that they shouldn't have a candidate for the presidency and not to return back to the authoritarian regime. And when the results of the election came out that the Ennahda don't have the major in is not the major party in the parliament, and they don't have they are not the president of the
okay, but one step back.
Yes.
What kind of choices that that actually led them to this stage?
I don't understand.
So this is like the choice not to have presidential candidates. So what happened before? What kind of choices these the ruling coalition made in order to reach this stage? This is only one choice. Okay, many other choices, have been made.
I didn't get it.
So there are many stages and many phases, right?
Yes.
And political elites responded differently to each of these stages and phases. Okay, so what happened before the presidential elections that Essebsi, won and reached power?
They had debates in the Shura Council whether to enter the presidential elections or to enter the parliamentary elections. So they decided to enter the parliamentary elections.
Okay, thanks, Khaled. Mayar Sabr Mohammed?
Yes, doctor, can you hear me?
Yeah. Turn on your camera.
Okay. Yes, doctor. I started my paper by talking about the context of the topic, which included the definition of democracy and its characteristics, something like free and fair elections and mass media that have a freedom. Then I talked about how it has several definitions that has been explained by several political scientists along a period of times. Then I moved to the mechanism of democratization and how a country could change its political regime from authoritarianism to a democratic regime, and the early start of democratization process, especially in the middle of 20th century. Then, according to the studying of Guillermo O'Donnell and Rostu, I talked about 4 ways to get rid of any authoritarian regime, which was Ben Ali in Tunisia, and trying to turn it into a democratic one. And these 4 ways are negotiation about pacts and some moments, like he called it moment. It's like the military moment, the economic moment, and the political moment. And then I talked about the Ennahda party, which made a partnership between the secular and the Islamic activism in Tunisia, and that was a challenge in that time, by the way. Then I talked about how Tunisia created the first constitution in the Arab world after its independence from France. In that time, from that time and until the revolution, it was ruled by only two presidents who are Habib Bourguiba and Ben Ali. Because Al Nahda refused to run any candidate for the presidency elections. Then I talked about the relationship between mass mobilization and political elites in Tunisia, and the role of each one of them in achieving democracy, as every one of them played a vital role in that. As a result of my paper, I reached a conclusion that democratization in Tunisia was a mutual process between both political elites and mass mobilization. As mass mobilization made the first spark of the revolution, because there were because people before revolution were unsatisfied about the economic, political, and civil conditions in Tunisia. So the mass mobilization started the first spark of the revolution, and then political elites started to apply democracy in Tunisia after the impeachment of Ben Ali. That's all.
Okay, more elaboration on elite choices?
Yes.
Can you tell me more? Yeah.
Yes, elite choices play a vital role in applying democracy after the impeachment of Ben Ali, after they have get rid of his authoritarian regime.
Ousting. Impeachment is not precise. No.
Yes, removing him.
Yeah.
Yes, as they try to take part in giving people more freedom to take part in the political process and so on.
Yeah, how?
I don't actually get these points in details, but it's exist in my paper. But in the presentation, I think I will talk about just the main points.
Yeah, main point. You still have 3 minutes to go, meaning you should have prepared more.
Yes, that's all I have prepared. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Maya.
Lujain? Doctor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Everything is clear?
Yeah, it's clear.
Doctor, can you please make me a co-host because I have prepared the PowerPoint presentation?
Okay. I did.
Okay, just 1 minute.
Salma, do you have?
لا يا دكتور، بس أنا كنت بقول لحضرتك إن أنا ready يعني عشان كان مشكلة وصلحتها.
Okay, yeah.
Doctor, is clear now? The PowerPoint
yeah, it's
presentation?
clear. Yeah.
Okay. I started my paper in a historical context. I started talking about Tunisia after gaining its independence, after being a French colony. Al-Habib Bourguiba hit and led an independence movement, and he gained the independence for Tunisia in 1956, but he didn't have any reformation strategies or policies, so another coup was waged against him by Zain al-Abidin Ben Ali in 1987. Ben Ali's early years started that he is going to have so many reformation policies, that he is going to allow the participation of multi-parties, and he promised so many pinky promises of reformation to the citizens. Later in his years, his real intentions started to appear. He started amending the constitutions and altering the constitutions in order to prolong his presidential terms. He started monopolizing the political field and the economic as well. Political-wise, he had his RCP ruling party, and he made it very tight to any other party to participate or oppose. One of these parties that suffered a lot of harassment from the ruling party was the Tunisie Verte, the Green Party of Tunisia. And on the economic side, he monopolized all the economic aspects. He built a very great economic empire called the empire between Ben Ali himself and one of his family members. It was called the Ben Ali Tabelsi Empire. This was in the middle of his era. The deterioration was a result from the monopolizing of the economic conditions. The unemployment rate among the fresh graduates was very high. It raised from 3.2, I guess, reaching 20% almost in 2010. The triggering factor was Mohammad Bouazizi setting himself on fire in the second half of December of 2010, because he suffered humiliation from a woman officer, in addition to the very bad economic circumstances he lived through. The procedures of the revolution against Ben Ali were divided into two sides: the mass mobilizations and the elite choices. The mass mobilization, people started getting out into the streets in every spot of Tunisia, the rural areas, the urban areas, the coastal and the non-coastal cities, rich and poor. Every class distinction, there was no class distinction between them. Everyone had the same unified goal, which was the ousting of the dictator Ben Ali. The elite choices during the procedures were divided into the military institution position and the UGTT. The UGTT stands for the Union Générale Tunisienne de Travail. Firstly, talking about the military institution, the military were always marginalized during the Ben Ali regime. They were always on low budget. So when the revolution started hitting the streets, the military men took the side of the protesters. They promised their security, and they threatened the police of Ben Ali that was using violence and coercion against the peaceful protesters, that they might reply in the same way. Moving to the position of the UGTT stood beside the protesters, the UGTT was the General Labor Union of Tunisia. The General Labor Union took the side of the protesters as it was the only coherent opposing organization during that time. It used its many offices all over Tunisia to be centers to lead the revolution, trying to organize the revolution against the oppression and the violence of the Ben Ali regime. The UGTT, being the only coherent institution of that time, was the leader of the conversations and the parley that were held by then in order to reach and to get with Tunisia to the safe shore. After the uprising, there was the democratic transition from being a country that was fed up from authoritarianism, moving to a democratic country. The legalization of the parties was the first step. Many parties were always marginalized and sometimes banned, and their heads were executed and exiled, like the Islamic parties. One of the most important parties that got legalized after the uprising was Ennahda Islamist Party, led by Al-Ghannouchi. Then in October, the first legislative free and fair, transparent elections was held. And according to the slides, the Ennahda Party got 41% with 89 seats. The CPR got 13.4% with 29 seats. And Ittakatul got 9.2% with 20 seats. Then a coalition was made to form a government of coalition, because the constitution by then stated that for a party to form a government, it must have the absolute majority, which didn't happen in the Tunisian case in 2011. After that, many movements of protest hit Tunisia because there was an assassination for two secular figures by then. People started to ask the Ennahda Party to step down and to get out of office, but Al-Ghannouchi stated that he is not going to leave the party except through he's not going to leave and he's not going to get out of office except through the same way which got him in, which was the elections and the ballot. So another elections were held in 2013, and surprisingly, Nida Tunis won 39% with 86 seats, beating down Ennahda Party with 31% and 69 seats. Then in 2014, the first free and fair election of the presidential term was held, and a secular winner was there with I guess 40. In the second round, he got 51% or 52%. Finally, Tunisia was stated as the only democratic country in 2016 according to the Democratic Index, and in 2020 it was considered as a democratic country on the Freedom House Index. Anthony Giddens gave an explanation, an example for and a definition for the democratic country, which stated that democratic country should have three things. Firstly, fair and free elections. Secondly, a legal framework. Thirdly, a multi-party ruling multi-party system in the elections.
Competing, yeah.
Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay. According to Anthony Giddens, Tunisia was satisfying all the three conditions. In 2011 and 2013, it had more than 5 parties competing in the elections. It reached the democratic transition. It had the legal framework that protected the rights of the minorities, just like the women's rights. And it had the free, fair elections with no corruption.
Okay, Lujain, one question.
Okay.
Apparently, you just limited elite choices to. Can you go back to the first slide? The general
slide?
trade union and the military.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you limited like elite choices. You define elites or the key players. They have always been the military institution and the general trade union.
Through the procedures, they were the UGTT and the military choices. But after the procedure, after the revolution was done, the Nahda party started to be a role, the Takatul party, the CPR, and so many other parties started to compete. The Nahda party was the most important
So what's
party.
what's the demarcating line? So the processes of mass mobilization, and then after after removing Ben Ali, so what's the starting point of the transition here?
The starting point of the transition was the ousting of Ben Ali himself, him being out of office, and then other parties and other players started to appear in the field. One of the most important of these parties was the Nahda party and the Islamist parties.
Yeah, okay. So what kind of choices, these people made?
Nahda party started and decided that he is not going to go through the presidential elections, and that they were only satisfied with the legislative elections. This is one of the choices. The other choice can be the coalition that was formed by then, because it didn't gain the absolute majority. It only gained 41%, and to form the government, it should be absolute majority. So there was a coalition done by them to form a coalited government, to have every party represented in that government with no exclusion, not either to Islamists or the secular players.
So they focused on coalition building, consensus building. Any other options that they made?
I think not. The thing that they mainly accepted, that there was alternation of power, that they got through the ballots, and they are going to get out of office also through the ballot. They are not going to oppose, they are not going to do any extremist actions that was actually prevailing in the Arab countries in that time.
Okay. Something happened to push them, to this direction, or?
Rashid al-Ghannouchi knew by heart that it's not going to be according to the Sharia law. He made some compromises that he is not going to stick fully to the Sharia law. He accepted that he is going to save and protect the minorities and the women's rights. He is not going to be extreme Islamist, but better to be a moderate Islamist.
Okay, and other parties in the Troika, did they made any other choices as well?
I didn't actually I didn't actually find any. The main parties was Nahda and then Nida Tunis, because this was the place and this was the scene where the alternation of power happened. Firstly, from a dictatorship to an Islamist party, and from an Islamist party to a secular party or a coalition called Nida Tunis.
Okay, thanks, Lujain.
Thank you.
Can you just stop being a host?
Okay.
Yeah.
Doctor, I can't stop being a co-host. You have to remove me from being a co-host.
Okay, yeah. Okay, let's have Yusuf until yeah. Yusuf is here? No? Okay. Khulud Tariq?
Yes, I'm here, doctor. Can you hear me and see me?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Hello. Okay, I started my paper, okay, by division, my paper into 3 parts, okay, اللي هو the first part after the independence أو the independence of Tunisia, okay, okay, and the role of Bourguiba, the first one, and after that, and the role of Ben Ali, and the last point I still.
Khulud, yeah, go on.
Okay, and the last point that I mentioned was that the democratic transitions that happened, or the political vacuum, okay, that happened after the fall of Ben Ali, okay, in 2011, okay, after the first thing, أول حاجة إن Bourguiba was the first president for Tunisia, where he seized the power in 1957. He was so popular because he considered as a prominent figure of his country's struggle for independence. وبعد كده he relegated military to a political يعني role ماشي وإن هو gave military no role to play. I think إن هو like the situation under Egypt اللي هو for the role of the Farouk King, I think. After that, I talked about burden who pushing Tunisia forward يعني mission of the party, not in armed forces. بعد كده he attempted to remove religion from the public square and from most programs of higher education and closed الزيتونة Moscow or like university for Muslims. I think إن هو ignored that يعني because إن هو كان civilian بس هو كان يعني كان بيميل يعني هو كان عنده tendency شوية للحكم الفرنسي أو متعلم منه حاجات كتير أوي. كان هو يعني wanted to reapply it in Tunisia, but he failed because he ignored that in the majority of Tunisia was Muslims and إن هم مسلمين يعني I think كده يعني فهو فشل إن هو يحقق ده. بس بعد كده he didn't promote the economic interest طبعا بتاعت the Tunisian generals. Okay, بعد كده after that I talked about النهضة. النهضة هو كان the largest هو أول حاجة when the نهضة started. ثانية واحدة. Yes. النهضة اللي هو at the beginning, okay, اللي هي again طبعا there's trends ماشي from the fact that إن هي built substructural community of the shared values. ماشي إن هي included people أو charismatic people إن هم who spread their influence through the schools and the local communities. okay, بعد كده وإن هي طبعا Okay, بعد كده يعني after that I think about إن هو there يعني after the 4 months, okay, after the fall of Ben Ali in Tunisia in 2011 there was about I think إن هو 155 members اللي هم of طبعا a diverse group ماشي were tasked إن هم forming a commission. ماشي and its purpose was not to write a new constitution but إن هم to deliberate on what the political choices has to be made, okay, before elections they could be held to create a stronger political society. بعد كده إن okay, بعد كده برضو كنت بتكلم برضو إن هو after the fall of the authoritarian regime اللي هو 10 years ago يعني brought the
re-emergence major of wide political movements from Islamist parties. Islamist party والمajority of Tunisia wanted the country's law fully يعني follow طبعا many religious parties received authorization, okay, اللي هي and most of them were small and conservative and wanted to implement الشرعية. And the term of شرعية was very يعني كان controversial جدا. I mean yes كانت so controversial and many debate to discuss in this concept يعني وإن الشرعية إن هي كانت regarded طبعا one of the sources of the legislations in the constitution اللي هو new constitutions اللي هو اتعمل I think يعني in 2014 بس وبعد كده so إن personal status code بقى إن هي made from الإسلاميك اللي هو الشريعة الإسلامية اللي هي الشرعية and the term of شرعية كان related to negative connotations بس وبعد كده after the discussion يعني at various levels of the party كانت the leadership explained that in any terms that cause a significant controversy مثلا had no place in the constitution يعني had no place in the constitution the terms of Islam وال Islamic teachings are included in the constitution but incomplete يعني
okay, so this is
okay,
like
all aspects of the religious and broader.
Okay, Khloud, because we have like just 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes. So now, like
okay.
you have like choice. They made choice. They made kind of compromise in order to relegate, this to the margin and to eliminate, any mention to Sharia in the constitution. So what kind of other choices made as well?
Okay. I think إن هما الidea بتاعت الidea of gender equality وال role of women دي برضو وإن هو not included reference to الشرعية the constitution أو the institution design of the political system وطبعا إن النهضة comprise in all issues.
Khloud, can you turn on the camera?
That I determined in my paper.
Turn on your camera.
I turn on the camera.
No, yeah, here we go.
Okay, that's all the choices that I mentioned in my paper.
Okay, so again, the choices were Sharia and what else? Eliminating or any mention to Sharia law in the constitution?
With gender, okay, of women
gender,
and
yeah.
of men and women.
Yeah.
Okay, with institution design of the political system. ماشي بعد كده طبعا the role of النهضة party that all mentioned يعني أنا يعني in my paper I explained all details بس يعني ما شرحتش ده يعني دلوقتي يعني
okay
بس أنا all points I mentioned in my paper.
Okay, thanks Khloud. Sharif?
Thank you.
Sharif is here? Unmute.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yeah, now it's okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So according to Rousseau, the transitional phase, there are 4 transitional phases. First is the background condition, then the preparatory phase, the decision-making, and the habituation phase. In the Tunisian context, the background conditions were that Ben Ali's regime was repressive, was corrupt, high unemployment rates, and high and low conditions of life were present for the Tunisians. So they genuinely believed in the idea of democracy, and that they wanted to throw out that government or that regime in order to have better life, and so on and so forth. So this leads us to the preparatory phase. As my friends explained and as I explained in the paper, it all started when Bouazizi set himself on fire. This action, not only he set himself on fire, but he started the emotions of other Tunisians to march the street, to mobilize millions of Tunisians, fill the streets, all sects of the population, because of the repression, the corruption, as I mentioned, of the Ben Ali's regime. Moving to the decisional phase, also as Donnell and Schmitter explained in their theory, that there are three pacts: the military pact, the political pact, and the economic pact. Starting by the military pact, because of half-century of marginalization under Bourguiba's and Ben Ali's regimes, the military had no popular support. They were not a part of the liberation of Tunisia from France, and they did not have bureaucratic positions nor an economic conglomerate to protect. So they chose to stay out of politics, their non-interventionist positions. Moving to the decision phase of the political actors, I started by Ben Ali. Ben Ali attempted to preserve the status quo by presenting some by compromises, by promising not to re-seek the elections, and also by hiding up the freedom of the people, by limiting the focus الرقابة on the social media and so on and so forth. But however, people, as I stated in the background condition, were fed up of him, so he fled the country. And Mohammed al-Ghannouchi, and not to be mistaken by Rashid al-Ghannouchi, took the government for like 2-3 months, I guess. Then moving to Ben Ashur Commission. This commission was the start of the coalition between the Islamist and the secularist parties. This rapprochement of opinions happened long before the revolution, because under Rashid al-Ghannouchi, al-Nahda had made some reforms in their ideologies. They became more moderate, which made them and the secularist parties can agree on a coalition. This moves us to the parliamentary elections, in which the Nahda won, not by the absolute majority. So they had to make a coalition between Nahda, Takatul, and the CPR, which we can call the Troika. This coalition was somewhat successful until some unrest appeared. The assassination of Belaid and Berhami, and the crisis of the constitution writing. Some of the National Constituent Assembly promised that they can finish the constitution in 1 year, but then the speaker said no, it can take 3 years. This created an environment of instability in which it helped the rise of the copycat Tamarrud, which prompted to overthrow the government, and the rise of Sibsi's Nida Tunis. And here we can say, and you can mention something very important, that the inclusivity of the Tunisian revolution. Sibsi was the Minister of Foreign Affairs under Bourguiba's from 81 to 86. So, as we can say, El Fulul was able to practice politics even after the ousting of Ben Ali. Tamarrud and Nida Tunis had made some cleavages between the secularists and the Islamist party, because some emphasis in of Nahda that they want to instate the Sharia in the constitution, and that the women should be complementary to men, not equal to men, and these things made some cleavages between both parties, until a national dialogue, the National Dialogue Quartet by the Tunisian General Labor Union, UGGT, Tunisian Confederation of Industry, Trade and Handicrafts, UTICA, Tunisian Human Rights League, and the Tunisian Bar Association made a national dialogue that included 20 plus political actors and civil actors of Tunisia that decided to have a roadmap in which the constitution should be written in a specific time, and then the Troika government should step down, and then should a parliamentary and presidential elections shall be made. After the instatement of the roadmap, Ennahda accepted all of these until the constitution should be made, then they can step down and the Troika can step down. This leads us to the parliamentary elections, in which the Ennahda predicted that they're gonna win the majority. However, and because they are gonna win the elections, they are not gonna have a presidential candidate. However, the results were not on their sides. Nida Tunis won the parliamentary elections. Thus, some internal calls from Ennahda party had been made that they should have a presidential candidate. However, Al-Ghannouchi opted for the decision that there will be no presidential candidate because of their trust. The people should trust them, unlike the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, that they changed they changed their minds in the middle. And after that, Nida Tunis and Qaid al-Sebsi won the elections, ending the transitional phase in Tunis and starting a new Tunisian Republic, as we can say.
Any other point? You still have like 3 seconds.
Okay, we can say the habituation phase, in which we can now see that Tunis now have a meaningful competition between all parties. As I said, the quartet, the Nida Tunis, the Troika, the CPR, the Takattul, Ennahda, all of these are now major players in the Tunisian politics. And as you said, also the inclusion, the Tunisian system is now inclusive. It included people before the revolution and after the revolution, and there is a sufficient level of civil and political liberty. That's all.
Okay, thanks, Sherif. Mariam Mohammed Sabit.
Doctor, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. In my paper, I talked about that Tunisia was one of the most repressive and democratic regimes until they decided to make a revolution, and then to move into a democratic regimes after the resignation of Ben Ali. They had the main guiding principles for democracy. The first principle was building a coalition, as the political parties had the taste of managing the task of managing the journey from the dictatorship to democratic state. As Ennahda's parties gave the chance to other parties to be in the regardless its ideological background, to be represent the people. There was not only one party, there was a lot of parties. The second principle was consensus building, as the political leaders have elaborated a new form based on participation, as all people have had the right to participate in elections and decide who got to represent them. The third one is the crisis management through the dialogue and compromising. This aim was not to remain in power. It was to ensure that the supreme representative body could draw a constitution to set the to set a constitution for a democratic Tunisia. Okay, and regarding the Rosso's model, there were 4 phases. The first one was
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. The first one was the national unity as the main condition to move from one system to another, that the people should be united on one thing. The second thing is the emergence of the conflict between the political elites, where there were supporters and opponents, as what happened in the revolution, that were supporters for the dictatorship regime, and there were opponents. And the second thing was the decision stage, where people decided to remove this dictatorship regime and move into democracy. The habitation phase, where democracy becomes normal and political parties, Nahda political party won the election and became the one who represents the people in Tunisia.
So what kind of decisions? Can you elaborate more on the decision-making phase?
Yeah, that one of the main decisions was merging between the Islamist party and the secular parties. That was there wasn't one party that represents the people. There were a lot of parties.
Not merging, it's like cross-ideological building, cross-ideological alliance or coalition.
Yeah, there was not only one party.
Okay. Okay, so what else?
Okay, the answer of the question is the mass mobilization played an important role, but political elites were also crucial for the system.
Okay.
Yeah, mass mobilization needed political elites to lead them.
Okay.
So both are important.
Anything to add?
What?
Anything to add?
No, nothing.
You wanna say something?
No, nothing.
Okay, thanks. So let me. Okay, guys. I know that you are tired, but I have to take like 5 more. So I already took the attendance. So if you want to leave, just leave. And I'm going to have 5 more. I'm going to have Sama Ayman, Lubna Islam, Mustafa Muhammad, Atif Al-Mitwali, Muhammad Gamal Mahmoud, Amal Zaki Mustafa. They are here?
Yes, doctor.
Yes, doctor.
Okay.
Yes,
Sama?
doctor.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Start. Sama, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Okay. First, I divided my paper into 2 parts. The first part is the theoretical framework, in which I talked about Rostow and O'Donnell series. Rostow introduced the 4 phases. The first one is background or the national unity. The second one is the preparatory phase, which means a political struggle. The third one is the decision phase. And the first one is the habituation. Then O'Donnell introduced the theory of pacts, the political, military, and economic one. Then I applied these theories on Tunisia's context, but I started in a historical sense from Ben Ali and El Habib Bourguiba. They were authoritarian rule. And they gave the military no rule to power. Okay, then the revolution started when Mohammed Bouazizi set himself on fire. And then Then this is considered as the mass mobilization, which continued to 28 days of civil resistance. Then I talked about the elite choices when Ennahda party and two other secular parties make a coalition, which is a political pact. I talked about their assembly, National Constituent Assembly. They offer people right legislation and executive rights. Then I talked about that Tunisia completed its democratic transition, but not fully a consolidated democracy, as this takes more time. I concluded that both elite choices and mass mobilization make this transition. The mass mobilization in sense of revolution, and the elite choices in sense of coalition parties.
Okay, so briefly, the choices were 1, 2 in bullet points.
The choices of what?
Of the elite choices. You talked about mass mobilization, so to put it briefly, what about choices, that helped with the installation of democratic governance?
They made the assembly.
So you talked about the pact, and then
yes,
just to talk about,
pact and the military pact, as the military did not interfere in politics after the revolution.
Okay, what else?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, doctor, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sama. Let's have Salma. I think she had a problem. Salma Yasser?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, Salma, I'll have you. Sorry, we kept you waiting. And then I'm going to have Lubna, Muhammad Mustafa, Muhammad Gamal, Amal in order. Yeah. Go ahead, Salma.
Okay, بس هي الكاميرا مش راضية تتفتح عندي.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, just go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I begin with an introduction about the Arab world and the revolution since late 2010 that aims to overthrow tyranny with its many model of political tyranny and enter to democratic transition. Then I speak about the history of Tunisian that was in 2010, after the young man Abu al-Azizi burned himself as a reaction on his ban on a policewoman being allowed to sell in his car in Tunisia. Then begins the revolution. Then I applying the fourth stage of Rosto in Tunisian. The first stage lay national unity. In order for the state to transform from a system to another, it must have a unified political, economic, culture, historical side. People shouldn't be divided into groups. The preparatory phase, it is a stage in which conflict arises between society and the elites, or between the elites themselves. But in Tunisia, the conflict occurred between the people and the ruling case. Then the mass mobilization happened. The station stage, which agreed upon after the revolution, after the emergence of parties, such as emergence of Ennahda party in Tunisian, where there is no diversity, is a mature democracy.
Is what?
Mature.
Oh, okay.
The first stage الhabitation phase, there is only one political party. There is no majority believe in democracy. They believe in democracy. بعد كده أنا اديت بقى definitions في الآخر يعني.
Okay, so answering the question, How did mass mobilization and elite choices
أقول يعني ال three choices.
with the transition? Yeah, with kind of application to the Tunisian case. So what happened already there?
They compromised on the idea of gender equality, on the role of women, not include reference to الشريعة قصدي in constitution. The institution design.
Yeah, go ahead. Salma, I cannot hear you.
They cooperate and compromise to achieve the general will.
How?
That's it.
Okay. Salma Yasser, right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Salma.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lubna?
Hi, doctor. Can you hear me?
Hi, Lubna. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. The topic that I have discussed in the paper was the Tunisian transition to democracy and whether it was a result of the elite choices or the mass mobilization. The theoretical framework that I have worked with was the theory represented by Danckwerts-Rostow in his book Transition to Democracy and by O'Donnell in his book Tentative Conclusion about Uncertain Democracy. First, I have started by highlighting some historic events that happened in Tunisia that has a great effect, on the events. First is the Islamic secular coalition, when the major parties have decided to overcome their differences to face the authoritarian regime. One of the leaders who had made a great difference in this phase was Rashid al-Ghannouchi. He was the leader of Ennahda. He was one of the political leaders of Ennahda party. He moderated the Islamic thoughts of his party just to reach a successful coalition. The second event is that in both Bourguiba and Ben Ali's era, they kept the military away from politics. They didn't give them any political or economic power. This has affected, after the revolution, it has a great effect because it kept them from the intervention in politics. Then I have talked about, I have argued that Tunisia perfectly fit in Rostow's model, which is that the transition to democracy has four main phases. The first phase, which is the sense of national unity or the importance of the sense of national unity. And the second phase, what we can call creating a conflict. This was represented in the severe resistance for 28 days in Tunisia, those protests done by the masses, those masses who are willing to have a better living condition and to end the authoritarian regime. And this phase has ended by the ousting of Ben Ali. The third phase, which was the decision-making phase or the negotiation phase, which has a critical role or a very important role to Rostow in his model. This phase was quite important in the Tunisian context. It somehow guaranteed the successful transition in Tunisia. It guarantees a successful transition in Tunisia.
Yeah, how? A little bit more.
Okay, before I will discuss it.
Okay.
Even before the revolution, this kind of coalition between the Islamic and the secular parties have stood in the face of Ben Ali, and it have challenged the authoritarian regime. And after the revolution, the first thing that has happened after the revolution, the elected National Constituent Assembly. It was a political pact between Ennahda, Takatul, and the CPR. It has a vital role in maintaining kind of stability in the country. They were thinking that in the transition to democracy, only the rule of the consensus guarantees stability, not the rule of the majority against the minority. When the democracy faced a crisis during the constitution writing period, this crisis appeared when the opposition party Nida Tunis led by Essebsi appeared, and when Tamarrud movement have appeared and want to withdraw the confidence from the NCA and the government led by Nahda, this crisis, they have overcome this crisis by forming the consensus committee, where every party represented in the assembly has only one seat, and Ben Jafar has widened the dialogue with as many key actors in the civil society, even those who were outside the assembly as he can. This has succeeded in this made Tunisia succeed in making a democratic constitution. And to overcome the crisis that the democracy was facing at this time. Even after the parliamentary and the presidential election where Essebsi won, they didn't win a majority in the parliament, so he made a coalition between five more parties, including Ennahda. This coalition play a vital role in not returning back to the authoritarian regime, as Essebsi was also one of the old system. Thus, Tunisia in this phase followed Rousseau's and O'Donnell model. It created political pacts between its parties, as O'Donnell represented in his book, to guarantee passing the third phase that Rousseau has represented in his book. And finally, the last phase is the phase of habituation, or consolidating the democracy according to the theory. This might take a long time to be established. So Tunisia is still fighting all the difficulties that it faces to consolidate the democracy. The difficulties might be represented in the difficult neighborhood that the terrorist attacks, the tourists near its border. So they are trying to overcome all these things to consolidate the democracy. To sum up, it's clear that Tunisia fit perfectly in Rousseau's model and represented the idea of pact represented by O'Donnell. And I think that in Tunisian case, both the elite and the masses have done the role perfectly in the transition to democracy. They have worked with each other hand in hand, and I don't think that any one of them could dispense the other. However, maybe the researchers are more interested in studying the role of the elites, as in the Arabian countries in the Arab Spring had kind of, all the Arab Springs has kind of civil resistance and protests done by the masses, but only the Tunisian elites had sacrificed their own interests to guarantee the success of the transition to democracy.
Okay, thank you, Lubna. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mustafa? Unmute. Mustafa, I can hear you. I'll take Muhammad Gamal until you fix, the voice thing. Muhammad Gamal?
Yes, doctor. ثانية واحدة. Let me open the camera بس. Wait a second, doctor. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
The camera is still open بس.
Muhammad, it's okay. You can start.
لا أنا تمام كده يا دكتور؟
Yeah.
Can you see me?
Yeah. Not well, but it's okay. Yeah.
Laptop is lagging بس.
There is an effect. Yeah. Okay, just start. Yeah. Don't worry about.
Okay, doctor. We represent some ideas in the topic paper, and in the definition I began in the definition of democracy. We said there is not a specific definition of democracy, and we began to represent Ben Ali's, and I talked about Ben Ali's as
Speak up.
after
Muhammad, can you
French
speak up?
colony and yes, doctor, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
تمام. And after Habib Bourguiba and Ben Ali's regime, Habib Bourguiba after 1 year of after a French colony and 1 year of Tunisian kingdom, and after that Ben Ali's regime, there was some sort of repression in the press, and economic development and was low, and unemployment was high, and there was unstable phase between Ben Ali and Bourguiba, as Ben Ali take opportunity to overthrow Habib Bourguiba, تمام. And that happened برضو in 2011 in military coup, I think, over Ben Ali's regime, and he fled to Saudi Arabia with his wife. That are done by the protesters. ثانية حضرتك دكتور كده. وكان في some sort of confliction between Ben Ali's and his people or his administrative, and I think a military officer called Rashid Ammar, he refused to shoot protesters in order أو based on order of Ben Ali, and that يعني the account in his sheet, I think that was a bad thing, يعني comparing to مثلا Qaddafi in Libya and Yemenian revolution and Libyan revolution. وإحنا قلنا ثانية definition of democracy that wasn't a specific definition, and it required social legitimacy and required some sort of transitions in that phase. And the transition Tunisian civil war relation before and during the Arab Spring, despite that nature of tyrannical period of Ben Ali and Bourguiba, and the government had established stable institutions, stable political institution after 2014, and after the 3 phases of Troika, I think كانت الفيز بتاع حمد الجبالي and وعلي العريض باين I think ومهدي جمعة بالترتيب.
Mohammed, can you just like go straight to
Yeah, I'm just explaining يعني to the point of that.
No, we have like, you still have like 3 minutes.
Doctor, I'm not talking yet, but
you just wasted 3 minutes.
Give me a second.
How did mass mobilization and lead choices facilitate democratic transition in Tunisia?
Mass mobilization, Bourguiba first formed the National Security Council that contained Chief of Staff and the Armed Forces and Director was an advisory administrative, يعني it wasn't an elite structure and cross alliance consists.
Mohammed, you have something wrong with the connection.
Can you hear me now, Doctor?
Yeah.
تمام. I thought that there was 3 phases, 3 small phases in elite power and the cross alliance. First phase consists of elite group that has taken action on strategy, and the second phase is the outcome, or the previous outcome of the inner circle. The third phase is one that is able to directly influence the strategy and the setting of the national agenda. Mass mobilization can some sort of backed agreements that make transition from the authoritarian regimes to more democratic regimes in Tunisia after Ben Ali and after Bourguiba in 2014, I think. That increased social mobilization, that people started to move to go home, out of their home and gather to يعني some sort of national unity كده in the first phase that required the efforts and experience and activate broad community participation in projects and plans, like some sort of engaging in local communities and the consolidation of
what
the
happened
alignment.
in the preparatory phase and decision-making phase? In 1 minute.
أنا قلت الفيرست فيز كانت national unity. Preparatory كانت some sort of struggle, a conflict between the parties.
What parties?
Secular side and the Islamist side.
Okay.
And decision phase, it was a legal party opposition conclude the preparatory phase, and it was a deliberative decision on the part of political leaders.
Yeah, what kind of decisions were made?
To accommodate between the two ideologies of secularism and Islamism.
Okay, and how did they materialize this?
I think they made some sort of, how they institutionalize some crucial aspect of the more democratic procedures.
Yeah, and in what sense?
Some sort of diversity in social unity, in existence of social unity back then. And the habituation phase, it was a cognitive democratic phase. I think it's it gives the phase to rationalize the commitment to it and have a greater edge to those sincerely believe in this phase, habituation phase.
Who would believe or have faith in democracy?
Ghannouchi, I think.
So we're talking about the elites, right?
Yes.
Okay.
وده كان تكملة للإليتس نفسهم.
Okay, thanks, Muhammad. Mustafa, have you fixed the problem or should I take Amal? Mustafa or Muhammad Mustafa Atif? No, we can't hear you. No. I think you have a problem with the mic. So, Mustafa, I'll have Amal and then we can delay your presentation till Wednesday, okay? Amal?
Can you hear me, doctor?
Yeah, yes, Amal. Yeah.
1 minute. Can you see me now?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the theoretical framework. I got the theoretical framework from 2 books, The Transition to Democracy by Rousseau and Transition from Authoritarian Rule by O'Donnell. So first off, in the paper, I started with the history. In the history, I talked about before the French occupation and after the French occupation and during the rule of Ben Ali and during the rule of Bourguiba. Then at the end of the history, I highlighted the main events that led to the revolution. So one of the main events that the people started to feel that they are unified. And at this point starts the first step in the model of Rousseau, which is the national unity. People start to feel like they are one and that they have the same goal, which is that they want to outcast the oppressive regime of Ben Ali. And the secular party and Islamist party start to unite, even though that they were a main barrier against the transition of democracy. They start to unite and realize that they both also have the same goal and they both want to outcast Ben Ali. Second comes the second phase, which is the preparatory phase, where the revolution happens. In this phase, people wanted to outcast Ben Ali, because they were tired of his regime. And at that point, the military played a very important role. They are the ones that protect the people against the violence of Ben Ali. because in his regime, they were very marginalized, and they had a very low budget, so they hated his system and also wanted it to end. So they protected the people against his violence, and then comes the third phase, which is the decision phase. In this phase, according to O'Donnell, a lot of pacts happened between actors. So the first pact was that Ben Ali tried to make compromises to stay in his rule. He tried to negotiate with people to let him continue, and that he won't re-elect himself again in the elections. Next, this starts after the revolution. A committee called Ben Ashur was made up of 155 members, are the ones that started the first step of the democratic transition. In this step, they tried to tackle the inequalities that Ben Ali did. So they revised the constitution, and they legalized the Ennahda party, which Ben Ali banned when in his rule. And they decided to create an assembly called the NCA Assembly. In this assembly, Ennahda didn't get the majority of the votes, so a governmental coalition was made between Ennahda, CPR, and Ittakated called Troika, and they were in the NCA. Next, a lot of problems happened during the transition, and the first problem was that there's the crisis laid in the constitution making process, because the NCA wanted to finish the constitution in 1 year, and the president at the moment, which was Monsef Marzouki, wanted to finish the constitution in 3 years. Then another crisis happened, which was an assassination of 2 of the critiques of Ennahda party that led to a Tamarrud movement. At this moment, it was a full crisis, and the democratic process was not going the right way. So Mustafa bin Ja'far decided that he wanted the transition to democracy and wanted the situation to normalize. So he suspended CA, decided together numerous parties and to have them have one voice, and this resulted in a consensus committee. This committee decided that they will finish the constitution, and before finishing the constitution, they wanted the resignation of the Troika pact. But Ennahda refused that and said that they will wait until the constitution was done. Next comes the last phase, which was the habituation phase. In this phase, the people of Tunisia start to get used to the democratic system, and although Tunisia hasn't really reached a consolidated democratic system, they have reached a democratic system, and the transition is complete. So that's what I talked about in the paper.
Can you, just to sum up, how, if we need to conclude, what would you say?
So in my conclusion, I do think that mass mobilization puts the country on the road to democracy, but elite choices is the one that leads the country through the phase itself. So like one of the elite choices that made the suspension of the NCS and, for example, the decisions that they made, the democratic transition. So I do think that they play and they are the puts on the right route, but the mass mobilization is the one that the thing that enables the country to even get into democratic transition.
Okay, thank you, Amal. Thank you so much. Mustafa, are you ready or next time? Okay, can you talk?
Can you hear me?
Not very well. Keep talking.
Shall we delete up the presentation on Wednesday?
No. Okay, now I hear you. If you can, yeah.
Okay. ثانية واحدة. كده everything is fine?
Yeah.
اوكي ماشي. I started يعني I started the term paper يعني by defining democracy as it is a system يعني to the type of government يعني that the rules or the major actions will be يعني will be يعني the people who will decide يعني either directly or indirectly. Then I talked about the Ben Ali's era يعني and يعني how he changed his way from being يعني maybe a democratic one to a dictatorship one, and his all his fake promises that he was talking about يعني he was talking about that there will be multi parties, and he didn't يعني he was lying يعني there will only in his regime يعني there will only one dominant party that advocates all his decisions يعني. And when a party tried to compete in the elections in 1998, another party tried to compete, and the people there يعني some of them were present and some of them were exiled, and there were corruption in his economic system. The economic system يعني you have a lot of corruption. After that the unemployment rate increased among the youth and reached 40%, more than 40%. So there was a revolution in 2010, and the protesters want Ben Ali to overthrow Ben Ali and to start a new democratic regime and the dictatorship regime, and they succeeded in their aim or the goal. Then Ben Ali escaped to Saudi Arabia to live there. Then there was an elections. Not the party make elections. Another party tried to join the party and the election they won the elections by 41%. Then they had several problems in their leadership and their they didn't reach their goals. So they in the re-elections in 2013 they didn't win, and another party won, and that showed that there was democracy in the system. Not like Ben Ali's era. It's if Ben Ali's era the dominant party, if it makes mistakes they will win the elections also. There will be no change in who will be winning the elections. So after that the mass mobilization and the political elites try to reach their goal, that try to have the free fair elections, try to have an equality, try to have national unity between the people there, and I think that's all.
Okay, so what are the choices made in order to pave the way for the installation of democratic regime? The choices the elites made.
The elites try to to make the democracy, to make democracy in everything, in the elections, in the everybody in everybody's way of experience way of بيشرح الرأي they have free vote
How did they do that? They should have followed some procedures or some steps in order to make this happen.
But they followed I don't know if I know that point or not. I don't know.
Okay, thanks, Mustafa. Okay, guys, so we will continue on next time. We will start out with the remaining ones, with the Tunisian the people who worked on Tunisia, and then we will have other people working on Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt, Nasserism and the import substitution industrialization, Arab socialism. Okay, so see you next on Wednesday, and hopefully we can finish it all on Wednesday. Okay, bye bye.